Good morning. It is Tuesday, August 20th, and this is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Selectmen. It is 8:30 a.m. In front of you, you have this morning's agenda. I would ask that we remove part of item 20 from the agenda. The New Canaan Country School and St. Luke's purchase orders. We need to do a little more work before we're ready to bring that forward. So we'll leave the Kerma on there, but remove the three other items in that agenda item. Could I get a motion to remove those purchase orders?
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous. And can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. We have the minutes from our regularly scheduled meeting on August 6th. Do I have any additions or corrections that you guys would like to make?
Nope.
Okay, seeing none, could I get a motion to approve the August 6th minutes?
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Public comments. Members of the public are welcome to provide comments to the Board of Selectmen on agenda topics scheduled for review and or vote. Comments submitted electronically should be sent to the following email address: bosdistribution@newcanaanct.gov. Do I have anyone wishing to make public comment?
No one on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Human Services purchase order. That would be Marcy. Hello, good morning.
Hey,
You
Marcy.
know what, can you put on your? Yep,
Yeah,
hard.
just hold it.
There you go.
There we go. Human Services is looking for 3 approvals for purchase orders using the opioid settlement grant award. $25,000 to the New Canaan Urgent Assessment Program, which will make a total of $50,000. New Canaan Cares $10,000, which will then be a total of $18,000. And the Behavioral Health Needs Assessment put on by the New Canaan Community Foundation for $25,000.
Does anyone have any questions? So I think just from a timing standpoint, the last I heard, the behavioral health needs assessment will probably be happening
In October.
and that will just be for adults at that point. And then they will do a further evaluation of
Right.
kids later.
And there's a meeting September 19th. We're trying to get Dr. Gerber and everybody
Yep.
in all our ducks in a row. And we will get more detail then.
Okay.
in
Thank
September.
Any other questions?
So far.
If not, if I could get a motion to approve a request from the Human Services Department to approve the following FY25 purchase orders, which are funded by the Opioid Settlement Grant Award. New Canaan Urgent Assessment Program, $25,000. New Canaan Cares, $10,000. Behavioral Health Needs Assessment, $25,000.
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous. Thank you,
Great, thanks,
Marcy.
guys.
Okay, Waveney House, Lapham Center facade and chimney. Morning, Tiger.
Good morning.
Good morning, Aaron.
From Hoffman Associates with us. So Erin did the assessment. She's the project engineer, project manager for the project. So I'm just going to hand it over to her and allow her to go through her presentation to you. And then we can answer questions after.
All right. Good morning. As Tiger mentioned, I am from Hoffman Architects and Engineers. We were doing a facade and chimney.
Yeah, I can't hear.
Can we turn her up? Sorry.
Mhm.
Sorry, Aaron, we just can't hear you very well.
Are we good?
Go ahead.
Okay. So yes, we were doing a facade assessment of Waveney House and a chimney assessment of Lapham Center. Am I able to share my screen?
Yes.
And just find where it is. Okay.
You know, Aaron,
Yes.
it was suggested that you mention your credentials.
Oh, sure. Hold on one sec. I'm not familiar with Zoom, so you'll have to
Okay,
forgive me here.
no worries.
Bottom right.
Yeah, I understood. Yeah, so I am a senior architect for Hoffman. I've been with the company for 23 years. And we are specialists in the rehabilitation of building exteriors. So we focus strictly on building facades, roofs, anything to do with the exterior of buildings and different types of facilities. So let me see. I just want to make sure I'm sharing the correct screen. Can you see the facade and roof assessment?
Yeah, yep, the front page of the
Report.
report. Thank you.
Let me just, like I said, I'm used to Teams. So as I mentioned, we were brought in because they were experiencing leaks at both the interior of Waveney House and Lapham Center. The leaks at Waveney House were concentrated on the service wing of the building, whereas at Lapham Center, they were focused more on the areas below the chimneys. Let me just reduce this here. So I'm just going to kind of start with our general observations of Waveney. So we were focused on the service wing mostly. There are other leaks in the main house area. Most of the leaks were concentrated along the east elevation of the service wing. To go to the section about the water infiltration, this is a plan showing the first floor of Waveney House. All of the blue dots indicate locations where there has been previous and ongoing water infiltration or leaks into the building. So as I mentioned, there's quite a few in the service wing over here, and then there are some in the breakfast room, and also on the below the west porch. There's photos of some of the interior damage within the building. This is the breakfast room where we had some efflorescence, that white staining that you see on the brick there. That is below a recently replaced roof on the terrace above. Again, in the same room, we have bubbling paint, staining on the stone, staining on the brick. And then these are all located, this is the what they would call the kitchen porch originally. We have some staining above the windows. And then this is in the kitchen where we have significant plaster damage in the corner of the space. There's also leaks on the first floor in an office storage space, and then some more efflorescence. This is the west porch area. These are the leaks that are concentrated on the second floor. Again, pretty much evidence of water infiltration in every one of these second floor spaces on the service wing. And then there is some minor water infiltration damage on the areas that are also indicated in blue on the second floor. Following up with some photographs of the extent of the damage related to the leaks on the east elevation of the service wing. Mostly it's shown as deteriorated plaster, bubbling paint. We did not see any active leaks when we were on site, but obviously all of these areas of damage are indicative of there being moisture within the walls that is entering the building. So you can see it's pretty significant in these areas. Again, this is the old sleeping porch where we have, again, that white staining, which we call efflorescence, on the surface of the masonry. And what efflorescence is basically when water gets into the masonry, it starts to leach any of the soluble salts that are in the mortar out. So that's why and then it dries, and that's why you see the left behind almost like salt deposits.
Can I ask a question? When the water gets in, does it damage the material underneath, or is this cosmetic issue?
When the water gets in, obviously it could damage the material that's underneath if it goes through what we call freeze-thaw cycles. So obviously if water gets in and it's cold enough to freeze it and it becomes ice, it could start to pop the stones or pop the mortar. Well, I'll show you examples of that later on where we see it on the exterior of the building. The stones itself, the face of the stones can start to pop off, the face of the brick can pop off. The mortar will start to disintegrate, and actually that can also become dislodged. And then if it's allowed to get into the building, it has no mechanism to get the water out to outside of the building, it'll actually come into the building. And I think that's what you're seeing here. This is on the interior of the old sleeping porch. So now this is interior space that was once, I believe, exterior space, or at least it was much more open to the outside as far as, screens and things like that. answered your question.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, so then what we did next is we concentrated, our first focus was on that east wing because there was such a significant amount of moisture damage there. We did a visual survey of the facades of the east wing just to find areas where we found potential defects in the facade materials and assemblies that we felt could be contributing to the water infiltration issues. In addition to that, we were just also looking at anything that could be a cosmetic issue or also a safety issue. So it's all kind of focused on basically the existing condition of these facades. So this section of the report kind of goes through all these various conditions that we observed. The main focus we found was at the masonry. We have areas where these limestone coins that are on the corner, there's a significant amount of deterioration in the mortar joints, which you can see here. Some joints are wide open where the mortar has actually deteriorated to the point where it has fallen out of the joint. There's some areas here where you can see where there's almost a lifting of the brick between the brick and the old copper flashing that's here. So obviously these are areas where any wind-driven rain and things like that can enter the building, but also any moisture coming down the face of the building has a path into the wall assembly. You can also see here there's a bit of displacement from the in the limestone. This piece of stone and this piece of stone are not in plane with each other, so that are also evidence of some shifting that might be caused, like I said, from the entrance of water into the assembly, deteriorating any backup masonry or any anchorage that is behind the stone. So this has caused, you know, a little bit of shifting in the stone itself. This is the elevation where, and if you remember on that plan I showed you, where we had evidence of plaster damage and moisture damage in every single one of these rooms on the second floor. And looking at this facade, you can see there is a line of flashing that was installed at some point above these windows. And again, you see that white staining. So that shows that there is moisture getting into that wall. And usually when the moisture is trapped, it's going to start coming out through the face of the brick. So it's showing us basically that this flashing is really not doing what it's supposed to do, meaning catching the water and letting it shed out. It's helping almost to trap the moisture in there. So that's why we're ending up with these stains above the windows. So first we did a kind of visual investigation of the facades, and you can see there's areas where you have limestone that's falling off or broken on the face of the window surrounds. And again, you see deteriorated mortar joints in these areas, cracked stone. Again, that flashing is right above us here. This window head looks like it's almost pushing out from the building. And at some point, it looks like somebody came in possibly to fix an open mortar joint, but that has also become disengaged from the adjacent brick.
Erin, are these photos still the east servants wing on the second floor?
Yes, this is the east elevation of the service wing on the second floor. So these conditions are all at these windows here.
Okay, great.
This is actually an inside corner near a bay window on that same elevation. We have some areas where there's actually cracked brick, open mortar joints. Again, these look like attempts at previous repairs, but again, you see that that's deteriorated and there's gaps between the mortar and the brick. We have some brick cracking. That's also a potential source of water infiltration, and also obviously deteriorates the face brick and can cause issues where the brick will become displaced. So we always pay attention to things like that. We always want to make sure that those get repaired. Again, this seems to be a pretty typical condition, not only on the service wing or the east wing, but also kind of throughout the entire house, where we have significant deterioration in the limestone joints. So basically, the detail that you have on all these walls is you'll have a limestone coping with this limestone band, and then all the corners are clad in limestone as well. And pretty much everywhere there's deterioration of some type in these joints. There's also evidence where we do have some displacement of the stone elsewhere on the building. Again, on the same elevation, this is we call a through wall scupper. So this is the means that they drain the roof area above. So essentially a hole is made through the wall assembly to install this sleeve so that it can deposit water into this, what we call a conductor head, down to the downspout. Noticing that there's cracking at the same location, again, cracking at the limestone joints and the mortar joints. Several locations we found on the building, not necessarily on this east wing, but elsewhere where they made these, put these scupper sleeves in. They did not seal around this perimeter. So again, that's another large opening where water can get into the building.
Aaron, those, which you just showed, was that part of the original building in terms of, the water diversion through this, or was this something after the fact?
I believe it was part of the original construction of the building. These are newer materials. So I think as part of the roof replacement project, these were installed. It's possible the older ones were in larger openings. So that's probably why when they put the sleeve in, there's a larger opening that was left open. So you can tell these are newer, the copper, it's still brown. And, eventually things will start to weather. So especially too, you see this kind of corrugated material here that they use for the sleeve itself. That's a more modern material as opposed to one from like 1912.
Thank you.
Yep. Again, I mean, a lot of the conditions, like I said, are very typical of a building of this age and of a solid masonry building. So nothing that we're seeing here is totally, new to us as far as what we've seen on similar buildings. Again, some vertical cracking. We call this step cracking. That follows kind of the profile of the mortar joints. So see here, this is actually, I think, on the same east elevation. So you can see the opening, original opening was larger than this particular sleeve. So they filled it in with mortar, but there is some areas where the mortar has actually deteriorated and left a gap between the sleeve and the opening.
So Aaron, what would you do in a situation like this where you had replaced an existing scupper and whatever you call the piping that came into it?
Yep.
Is that what you would have done, and it's now aged where it's deteriorating, or should there have been a different fix?
So typically what we would do is if we were creating a through wall scupper through a wall, we would actually make a slightly larger opening and line the entire opening with like a metal flashing so that the whole entire sleeve is flashed from the inside face of the wall where the roof is all the way up to the outside face. So what you would basically see here is a metal sleeve coming out that has a flange that kind of comes over and covers over a portion of the brick so that we know that that entire hole or opening through the wall is completely watertight. So I'm not totally sure what's inside this wall as far as what they did here. I mean, it's possible they just ran this this sleeve through the wall, and I don't know if they necessarily flashed the inside of the wall. So like I said, if water gets in here, it can go into the surrounding and cause issues. So this detail, we would basically just add a liner in the opening. Okay. So just continuing, like I'm gonna kind of breeze a bit through some of these, but I'm just showing you examples of areas where we see where the mortar's deteriorated, missing. There's deterioration on the mortar joint below the copings. We also didn't find any evidence of there being any continuous flashing below the copings. A typical detail now, what we would do is below this coping, we would have some kind of continuous flashing that would protect the lower wall assembly from any moisture that might get in through the joints above or through, cracks or spalls in the stone. That's kind of not how things were done, back in the early 20th century. So these are basically set on solid mortar beds And these lead caps were meant as a means of water protection. So these would protect the joints. Typically now you don't really see these. You see more sealant joints or sometimes mortar joints, but we prefer sealant joints. So this is basically the means of keeping water out of the coping assembly and getting into the wall below. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit, because I'll show you one of the areas where we opened one of those up. Again, we have some stones that are displaced from the surface of the wall. There are some areas, this is just, I mean, this is mainly a cosmetic thing. It looks like they used sealant or caulk to repair open mortar joints in the masonry. We see it all the time. That's not the appropriate application for that material. In reality, this should have been, the joint should have been cut out and repointed with mortar as opposed to the sealant. The main thing with masonry is it's meant to be porous, take on water and dry out. And if water does get in, there's a means for it to kind of come out through the surface of the wall through drying. And by doing this, you're preventing that process from happening. So you can trap moisture behind the wall, especially if, you know, this whole area isn't sealed, then basically you're creating an area where the water passage can be blocked. We just did a survey of the roof too. We know it was recently replaced, but we wanted to see if there were any conditions that were contributing to the leaks below. Did not see anything that would really jump out to us. Looked like all the solder joints in the metal lining were all intact. Did not see any deterioration in the tiles themselves. So we feel that the water infiltration is mostly related to the wall assembly and the copings. There was one area where one of the drains, I think, had some leaves in it, so it was just taking on a bit of water. So that's just a maintenance item that needs to, you know, be taken care of regularly. There are some, you know, minor issues with the chimneys. We have some broken terracotta flues, a bit of staining. This is basically just runoff from this copper. It's not hurting the stone. It's just obviously a cosmetic concern. There is some minor spalling. It looks like that's associated with the attachment for the lightning protection cable. Looks like they tried to attach it on a corner, so it might have, the fastener might have busted the stone at that corner. These all become potential issues, you know, in the future. If this deterioration continues, it could again lead to moisture infiltration or displacement of the stone. We don't think right now that that's anything contributing to the leaks below, but since we saw that, we just wanted to call attention to it. This also looks like it was a recently replaced metal roof on, this is the bay window on the first floor on the service wing. And really the only issue we saw here was they put sealant in the joint between the flashing and the brick, and that's typically not what we want to do if we want to make sure that there's water, if any water kind of can get in, hit the flashing and exit the face of the wall. So I mean, that really just needs to be a mortar joint. Same thing below the copings. Mortar allows water that gets in to dry out. Sealant does not. Sealant is meant to keep the water out, obviously, but within a wall assembly, you want to make sure you provide as many locations for the water to exit the assembly as possible. Again, just looking at the roof, this all looks like it's in good condition. Did not see any concerns with the roof assembly itself. So what we did was on this east elevation of the service wing, we did a couple probes to try to figure out, to see if we could see what was going on inside the wall assembly that might be contributing to these leaks. So we did one above a window on the second floor. We did one above a window on the first floor. And this is that kitchen area where I showed you the photograph of the significant amount of plaster damage. And then we did a couple openings on the roof above the breakfast room. So this is a probe we did above the second floor window. We removed a section of brick. We noticed that there is an existing copper flashing that was installed at some point. That does not appear to be original to the building, because this was one of the only locations where we found this flashing. So it's possible that, you know, there were past leaks that were going on and this was someone's attempt to remedy that situation. So we just basically started with removing bricks, you know, wythe by wythe to try to get to as close as we could to the interior of the building without disrupting any interior finishes. So here you see, we went all the way back from this location. I think was about 3 to 4 wise of brick before we hit this back side of the copper flashing. This terracotta block that you see in the back, on the opposite side of this is actually where you have your plaster, your interior plaster applied. So if you were to open up the wall, you would see this, the other face of this terracotta block. So it looks like they installed the flashing and did put a vertical leg on it, which is good because you want to have a location where if the water gets in, it can't go back into the assembly. However, what they did was they put this in, but there's a significant, probably half-inch gap between the backside of this flashing and the terracotta. So what that means is any water that kind of gets into this assembly that gets behind that back wythe of brick can just get right into your interior wall assembly. Usually these terracotta blocks, also with most backup materials, they are, how do I describe this? You know, with face brick, we make sure all the joints are solid and fully tooled and the brick is set in solid mortar. Usually with backup materials, it's a little less of a quality of installation. So you'll find that there's holes and gaps between these terracotta blocks where the mortar, you know, doesn't fully cover the joints. There's also, you know, I believe too that this might be an opening within the block itself. So there's many locations where the water can actually, once it gets to that point, get into the building. So you want to do as much as you can to prevent the water from getting to that point. So this is just showing here where we can actually fit a tool behind the flashing at this point. Proper construction would be that this flashing would be terminated and sealed across the top, so that gap wouldn't exist. So that water kind of that runs down the face can hit this flashing and then somehow make it out through the face of the brick. So this was the second probe that we did above the kitchen window. And this is more evidence of the original construction. So we don't have that flashing, which was likely a later addition. So it's just solid masonry from the face of the wall all the way back. We did find a piece of steel in here that we assume is supporting the stone behind us. So it's spanning the opening. It's basically a lintel spanning the opening and supporting the stone and the brick above. You can see here what I mean about the condition of the mortar joints in the interior withes of brick. Not of the same quality as, you know, the outer withes. So if water did get in here, there's many locations where it can get behind the mortar and into the wall. Did not see any indication of rust or deterioration of the steel itself. Right now, I think what we feel is the water infiltration on the kitchen level is more associated with something going on at the top of the wall with the copings and the open joints in the limestone, as opposed to coming in through the window head. The last 3 probes that we did, as I mentioned, are on the roof above the breakfast room. So if you recall the photos I first showed where we had the efflorescence on the brick wall and the interior, the peeling paint, deteriorated mortar joints and things like that on the inside. This is the roof directly above. This roof, I'm not sure when it was replaced, but it is also a recent replacement. And you can see here based on the condition of the copper flashing. Again, here's a condition where they sealed between the brick and the flashing. So we opened this up because we just wanted to see how far the flashing went in. Based on the fact that this brick looks like it has not been replaced, the mortar matches from top to bottom of the wall, we assumed that this was not a flashing that extended far into the wall. So when we opened that up, we found that basically what they did was what we call a reglet flashing, which is they bend the flashing a little bit to kind of wedge it into the joint, and then they seal over it. So really this flashing only goes back maybe about a half an inch. And this is meant more to protect, to keep water from the roof assembly from getting into the building. It's not meant to do anything with the wall assembly itself. So that being said, any moisture that gets in at the top of the wall can basically flow freely down to the wall below, which that's probably what we're seeing in the inside of the building when we see the efflorescence above that archway in the breakfast room. So we continued with kind of around the perimeter of the parapet wall on this roof, and we cut out some more sealant. This was below a coping, limestone coping in the flashing, just to see too. We didn't see any indication that these copings were removed and reset during the roof replacement project. So our assumption was we were going to find the same condition that we found here. When we opened it up, there was this is a foam backer rod that fills the joint. And then as soon as we opened that up, you see this drip of water. So there was water that came out of this joint when we opened it up. So water that gets in here, because this is a sealant joint, it can't get out. So it's going to go into the wall. So once we remove the sealant here, you see that they basically brought the flashing in and turned it up the height of the joint. Beyond that, underneath the coping, there is no flashing. So on the outside of this wall, you would not see any kind of flashing or drip edge or anything like that that would indicate that there's flashing below the coping. So as I mentioned, does not look like these copings were taken off and flashing installed underneath. So we went to one of these copings to do the same thing around the perimeter, found the same condition. Again, water came out of the joint. And then what we wanted to do was look at underneath one of these lead caps to see what the condition of that was. So we peeled that up and found that water set the cap in sealant, which is what they're supposed to do. It was not a full bed of sealant. So if it was installed the way it was supposed to, there would be sealant coming out underneath this flange that would be cleaned off, so that you would know that the gap between the cap and the stone was fully watertight. So water that's on the surface of this stone can actually get underneath this cap, and again go through this joint down to where there's no flashing, down into the wall, and it just becomes a chain reaction of events that can lead to infiltration and damage on the inside.
Hey, Erin, I'm getting a little confused. So sealant is appropriate to use in some places, but not others. Am I hearing that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Usually,
and so you don't want to use it, like you want the brick to be able to breathe, right? And
yes.
But here it's appropriate to use it.
Here it's okay. Typically when we're doing coping details, we'll do a sealant joint without the lead T cap over the copings, because they're skyward facing mostly. So we don't want water falling directly onto the mortar joints. That would further their deterioration and weathering. So in these locations, we would typically use sealant. In building expansion joints, we would use sealant because obviously the sealants can move as opposed to the mortar, which can't. But predominantly in masonry joints, we'll use mortar to kind of make the continuous porous wall assembly so that it can dry out. So like in this situation, by using sealant here, the water that got into this joint couldn't get out. Obviously, it couldn't get out either because that leg that they put on the backside of that flashing was going to block any water that got into the joint beyond it from coming out. So it had no choice to go but down, right? So in this situation, if we had through wall flashing that went up and under and all the way across the bottom of the stone and came out on the other side, that water that got in would hit the flashing, and then with a mortar joint here, it'd be allowed to dry out. But because we have sealant here, the water that gets in can't get out and can only go in. That makes sense.
All right, thanks.
Yep. So this is just some more showing the joint. There's no kind of filler material. There's a backer rod here, but it looks like it's pretty open. in, further inside the stone. So again, contributing to issues with water getting in between the copings. These are just some general conditions. We then took a look around the rest of the building just to see if we found similar conditions that we found on the service wing. So again, finding areas where mortars open. This is actually at a conductor head below a scupper sleeve, excuse me. So any gaps that you have in the mortar are potential sources of water infiltration. The water gets in, can cause damage to the stone, but then also can result in leaks into the building. Again, you have issues where the joints are open, the stones look like they're starting to become displaced from the wall assembly. If you look here, so because this is such an even gap between the stone itself and the mortar, this is kind of showing that the stone itself has shifted. You can even see here, there's a little bit of a difference in location. The bottom of this stone is not in plane with this stone. This is what I was talking about when someone, I don't know when the roof's above these bay windows. So this is on the north elevation, the main entrance elevation of the building. And at these window bays, there's a copper roof above, again, a scupper cut through the wall to allow drainage of that roof that drops into this box here. And you can see where they cut this sleeve through, there's a significant opening that is not sealed off. So you can see here, there was actually a bird's nest inside this particular opening. In addition to allowing birds in there, it can allow moisture in there, insects, all sorts of stuff. So again, typically what you'd want to see is a fully lined opening through the wall that comes out and terminates against the face of the wall so that you know that that entire length is protected. So seeing this, again, shows that more than likely it was not this. They used the old opening for the old sleeve and just put a new sleeve in, but did not finish that off.
And this looks like the same age as the other scupper detail.
Yeah, so I mean, because it's the brown copper, it hasn't had time to turn green with verdigris, so it's obviously not going to be something that's original to the building.
Yeah, and this was not lined, so we probably can assume the one that you couldn't see the inside was also.
Yeah, it looked, I mean, it just, probably to do that would require some masonry removal, which would be a lot more involved than just, running a sleeve through the existing opening. These are just some typical conditions that you'd find with limestone of this age. There's some spalling, there's an odd crack here. perfectly horizontal, which is strange. Again, here you see the open and deteriorated mortar joints. So you can see this gutter. It looks like on the main house, they did not replace the exterior gutter. They lined it with new copper. So you can tell this is older copper and this is newer materials. So you can just see the difference in the weathering. This is the end of one of those gables where we see missing mortar, deteriorated mortar. And if we go down further, you can actually see daylight underneath between this top stone and this bottom stone. So this stone itself has become disengaged from the mortar bed. This is also another view of that same location. And you can see there's a little bit of, looks like displacement as well. There's another condition where the sleeve was run through the wall. This is open. Another location similar to the east elevation of the service wing, where the lintel above the window looks like it's become displaced a little bit from the main surface of the wall. And you can see that evidenced by the deterioration in the mortar. It's like whether the displacement caused the deterioration in the mortar or the deterioration in the mortar caused displacement. Either way, these two are kind of contributing factors to this condition. Has some areas where you have previous patches that look like they're starting to fail. Not sure how this patch was installed, but usually if there's a deep patch, you want to install pins into the stone to help hold the patching material and the stone together. but you see some spalling around the existing stone right where the patch is. So, you know, these are basically starting to fail, and obviously the color isn't quite a match to the existing stone either. Just continuing around with deterioration of mortar at the window openings. We had some locations where it looked like there was water coming in at the window heads. Again, there's no flashing above this stone or above the window like we would see in modern construction. So any water that gets in here can easily get between the window and the stone and come into the face of the building. So, I mean, this is more of a cosmetic thing. You see runoff from the copper. That's, you know, kind of hard to prevent when you have copper metal on the metal elements on the facade over stone. See that everywhere. I mean, that's just something you can remedy with, you know, cleaning. And some areas where, so this is the condition like I was talking about originally. This is at a cornice. This is what we call a skyward facing joint. So this is the top of the cornice, so it faces up. Originally, they had a mortar joint here in original construction. It looks like from this condition, there were some issues with this mortar joint, and somebody came in and basically just put a very surface cover of sealant over the top of it. That's really not the way to do it. The proper way to do this would be to cut out that deteriorated mortar joint, put in a backer material, and put in a full sealant joint. So this sealant along the top of this cornice, and it looks like it's pretty much everywhere along the top of the cornice, is going to start to fail, and basically you have an open mortar joint again. So just going through some cracks, very typical stuff. This is all, you know, repairable defects. Again, another location where they ran the sleeve through the wall, but then we also have a gap between the brick and the stone itself. Looks like it's sealed above here, but down here it's wide open. So again, anything that comes off the roof that comes out this hole that's not sealed off can get right into this joint.
Hey, Erin, do you think in those, we've seen a couple of these that where those gaps are, do you think there was like a patch put in there that fell out, or do you just think it was left open?
It looks like it was just left open. I'm not sure, like they might have put mortar in it, like that we saw like on the east elevation, but that was not gonna last.
Okay.
It's a pretty significant gap for them to, especially in some of the other ones where you saw that bird's nest in the inside that hole, like that's a large gap. So anything they kind of put in there to patch it, like with a stone patch or mortar, was not going to last. You really need to kind of have a full termination of metal there. Again, deteriorated mortar joints below the copings, similar condition where there's not flashing below these copings like we would see in modern construction. So your main source of water protection at these coping locations is the lead caps over the joints. If we assume that they're a similar condition to what we saw on the breakfast room roof, that this is not necessarily set in a full bed of sealant to prevent water from getting into this joint. So have similar locations where water can get in between the stone and the cap, get into this joint. Because there's no flashing, it leads to deterioration within the wall assembly. So here again, we see efflorescence on the wall. This is actually the wall above the sleeping porch, or the room above the west porch. So again, indicative of there being moisture within the wall that brings those salts to the surface. The moisture dries out and leaves this white residue behind. This is above those windows on the west porch. These are all previous patches. These look like they're in better shape than the one that we saw previously. Obviously, the colors don't really match. It's very difficult to match historic stone because you don't know whether you're matching kind of dirty weathered stone or you want to match clean stone. So it's always kind of trying to figure out the best balance between the colors. So sometimes they're too dark, like in the previous one, and sometimes they're too light. Again, deteriorated mortar right at a window opening. This is at a window sill. You do see some, it looks like some runoff from the copper above. And here you see kind of significant staining. Again, related to the copper gutter. So this is an original copper gutter to the building. It runs off the face and it leaves behind the green staining. We have some black kind of atmospheric staining. And this is on the side of the building where it probably doesn't get a ton of sun. And there's sun here, but this is kind of in shadow a lot. So usually when you see staining like this on a facade, it just means that the brick and masonry on that side is just slow to dry out when it rains. It's not causing any damage. It's just more of a cosmetic thing, but we do see a little bit of the white efflorescence here. This was a stone that looked like it was previously an attempt to patch it, or attempt to what we call a Dutchman, where they installed a piece of stone to repair a broken piece of stone. But when we were here, the stone was actually kind of falling out of the the wall. So we took it off so it didn't fall on anybody. But you can see here, usually with a repair like that, you want to be able to see some anchor pins in there that holds the new stone to the old stone. And could not see anything like that. So that's just something that needs to be fixed at some point. Some areas where you have deterioration at the wood sills at the windows. Again, this is just typical aging of a wood windowsill. Needs to be repaired or replaced if it's fully rotted, and then repainted to match. More conditions like that. This one's a little bit more deteriorated. We actually see pieces of it starting to come off. Again, some spalling on the underside of an archway. So that's showing that there's probably water. This is below the sleeping porch. So this is on the west porch. Probably water in the wall above. This is right at the main entrance of the building. Aside from the white staining, it looks like someone came in, started to cut out these joints to repoint them, and then didn't finish repointing them. So in some locations you can see they kind of overcut the joints. So this really just needs to be finished off and repointed. But I thought we'd make notice of that because it's right at the main entrance of the building. Some surface spalling of the stones. The roof itself, again, looks like it's in very good shape. There is some typical weathering of the stone at the chimneys and the joints and things like that, but nothing major. Some debris collected in the corners of the roof, maintenance item. The standing seam roof on the top looks like it's in good shape. Just scrolling quickly through these. Yeah, this is just kind of typical weathered stone. Just looking at the flat seam copper, also in good shape. This is, we'll call this a gutter for lack of a better word. This is along the main entrance of the building. Again, looks like it's draining properly. We don't see any ponding water or anything like that. So like I said, here, it looks like when they replaced the roof, they ran the new metal down and onto the old gutter. So the new copper ends where the old gutter ends. Just kind of scrolling through these, a little bit of staining on the terracotta. Again, a cosmetic thing. It looks like this gutter might have some debris in it that's collecting water. This is between the main entrance and the entrance portico thing and the building itself. Did find one small area where there's a broken terracotta tile, and that's actually behind this chimney. This is the west porch and the sleeping porch above. Again, it's debris collected in the roof. So that's Waveney. So I don't know if you want me to go to Lapham and then talk about the recommendations for Waveney, or I can talk about Lapham and then we can talk about all the recommendations.
Why don't we go on to Lapham and then we can discuss all the recommendations.
Okay.
Yeah, can I ask a question first, Erin, just to make sure so people know? So your review of this, you checked out the entire building, every external surface and all the roofing. So it was a completely thorough review of the entire structure, correct?
Right. We the only area that we couldn't get, obviously, because access was an issue, was on the opposite, I guess it would be the south side of the building where you have all the kind of landscaped areas. We couldn't get the lift in there to get elevated access, but we did look at the lower level. And our assumption is obviously, given the similar construction around the building, that we have similar issues on those facades as well. So we took that into account when we did our recommendations. and did our kind of estimate of probable construction cost, assuming that the same kind of conditions that we found on the north and west elevations were what we would find on the south elevation. So like,
Thanks.
so at Lapham, we were concentrated mainly on the chimneys. So you have 3 chimneys here. For our purposes, we name them north, center, and south. So this is just kind of locating them in reference to other areas of the building. So on the inside of the building, it looks like you have some leaks right in the areas below the chimneys, mostly seen in locations where you have some staining and some peeling paint. In this one location, it looked like there was some standing water on the floor. So that's why we focused our attention on the chimneys themselves. So what you have is basically a stone chimney. This is granite. Then you have a limestone chimney cap with terracotta flues, and then you have these side walls coming down each side that run along the slope of the roof. They again have the stone walls, and then they have granite copings on the top with lead caps, similar to what we see at Waveney House. So all of these conditions that we see on each of these chimneys are pretty typical. We did go through each one to document anything that might be atypical, but I'll just kind of show you one to show you kind of what we found. The chimney cap itself, you see some surface cracking and some staining. Again, construction of this age, chimney caps we would normally see have a flashing between the chimney cap and the stone itself. This is just solid masonry. The flues themselves are terracotta that are just set right into the cap. And then on these sidewalls, we have copper step flashing that was installed the same time this roof was installed. This roof is not original to the building either, as you can see from the age of this copper. So a lot of these joints, it's very typical in this type of kind of granite rubble kind of coursing. It's not really coursing because it's very irregular. You end up with very wide mortar joints, and you can see why that might be an issue in some later photos. But this is typically what we saw at the copings on these side walls. So you have the granite coping with this lead T-cap. The lead T-cap is supposed to extend down the vertical face of the joints like we saw over at Waveney. For some reason, when these were installed, I don't know, they stopped them here, or later efforts, I don't know, they cut them, I don't know, but this is just
And through some other discussions, I understand that I think the copper went fully through these caps. So unlike what we saw at Waveney, where the copper just stopped, this copper that you see, I believe, goes under the full length of that course. So would that change your evaluation of the need for the T-cap to come all the way down?
Yeah, because I mean, you can put the T-cap as kind of a belts and suspenders kind of thing. If that flashing does extend all the way through, this could just be a regular sealant joint with a backer rod material and sealant across. Because right now, you know, the lead cap is protecting the joint, but it's not fully protecting the joint. So it can be replaced if you want to, you know, maintain kind of the aesthetic look of it. But otherwise, this can just be a sealant joint if this flashing does extend all the way
So
through.
do you think if they did that copper through, they probably left that T as an aesthetic?
Possibly. Because really, I mean, you'll see in later photos, it's not doing anything really for water protection. But that's, you know, even if this flashing goes all the way through, we do want to make sure that we protect the stone and the mortar below it from deterioration. So this needs to be a watertight joint, however, which way you do, whether it's a lead cap or just a sealant joint. So other things that we found here is like basically this mortar bed below the stone is deteriorated. You can see that we have water in there because we have moss growing out of the joints. So same thing here. So they have this lead T-cap, it stops, there's some sealant here, but this joint is wide open. This joint is open. If they did run the copper all the way through, that would mean they took the stones off and reset them. And I would wonder how they reset them, if they reset them in pins, and whether those pins are fully sealed off, or whether that's a possible source where the water can get, that gets in this joint, can get to where those pins are and get into the masonry. So that would be interesting to know if that was what they did. So that condition basically is typical throughout. Every one of the walls that runs below the chimneys has that same condition with the lead T-cap, the coping set on mortar, and this copper flashing material, but the joints are open, the mortar's deteriorated. So there's different paths for the water to get in. You can see here, this is a difficult condition to make watertight. So if they did run this all the way underneath the coping, I would hope to see that it would come up maybe and terminate a little bit better against the wall of the chimney.
Okay.
Because if they just stopped it here,
Mhm.
this joint isn't watertight, they
Yep.
can get water in this joint right between the stone and the flashing.
Mhm.
And at that point, the flashing is totally ineffective. Again, just showing a lot of different areas where you have the same stuff going on. But you do see deterioration of these caps, quite a bit of cracking, water. Obviously, anytime you see this white staining, it's showing that there's water in the stone somewhere. You have some cracked chimney flues. These look like these were abandoned at some point, because they were fully filled in with mortar or concrete. So we only have one that's open. A lot of times too, we want to see caps over these flues to kind of prevent water, moisture, but also animals from getting into your flues and causing issues. So
Sorry, Aaron, why are some of those capped? Why are two cemented closed and one open?
I'm assuming whatever these flues served is no longer operable. Whether it was an old fireplace that was bricked up, or some other
Like, or we don't use some of these fireplaces. They've been completely abandoned, some of
Yeah.
the fireplaces in Lapham. So that's probably why. And so then we just have boilers and
I'm just kind of scrolling through. You can see here, this is the issue with these very wide mortar joints. Obviously there's more surface area for the water to get to. So these weather faster than like a thinner, say like brick joint. So like some of these joints are inch and a half wide, which are pretty significant. But it's really, fortunately, other than, periodic repointing, there's really nothing you can do to prevent that. It's just with this type of stone where you have irregular stones, you're going to have irregular mortar joints. It's like this was a large area of mortar that basically busted out. So you have no mortar here between these two stones. So yeah, like, see, this is the condition that we ran into a lot. So like there is some sealant under these lead T-caps, but it doesn't come all the way across. So we don't believe that these are set into a full bed of sealant. So water can get under here. The hope is that this flashing goes all the way through, so it's stopping the majority of it. But again, if there's any penetrations through that flashing, the water can just go right in underneath the flashing and cause the issues. I think the area of the most concern was what I pointed out at the top of those walls where it meets the chimney. So here you can see here where this joint is basically wide open, and this is the lead T-cap down below it. So it's not doing much to prevent any water that gets in here from getting behind the stone and getting underneath. So if that flashing underneath the coping doesn't terminate properly against that chimney wall, it's not really doing much at that location. And in general, those were the chimneys. Had similar issues at the copings themselves. So on the gable ends, here we don't have those lead caps, and we don't have any visible flashing underneath. There aren't any current leaks that I know of associated with these areas, but we just kind of wanted to point out some issues that we saw with this that may potentially lead to some problems. So again, you have moss growing between these mortar, between the stones and the mortar. Again, this is a very wide mortar joint. So, this is just going to weather faster than a thinner joint. Here we have mortar between the coping stones. This is typically why we don't want to use mortar at scale joints, because they're going to take on an excess amount of moisture compared to joints on vertical surfaces. So here we would recommend doing a sealant joint instead of a mortar joint, because this is just going to deteriorate faster than other mortar on the building. Have some areas where we have some cracking and spalling in the granite copings themselves. Again, this looks like a patch of some sort that somebody did. The stone might have spalled and cracked, and they filled it in with what looks like mortar. Probably not appropriate as far as a patching material, because this is a lot more porous than a stone patching material would be. So this, is likely to fail faster than a stone patch would. Just looking at, believe this was the old entrance to the building. A significant amount of staining due to water on the face of this stone from below the copings. Again, issues with the mortar joints, water getting in and coming down the face of the building. This is at one of the other gable ends where you can see the mortar bed is almost completely gone at this side of the stone. Again, it as in addition to waterproofing this joint, it's not giving the stone a surface to really sit on. This is what we saw very typically. A little bit of sealant on one side, maybe not so much. This is a very wide joint between the stones. It's just not a detail that's going to stand up to weathering for a very long time. Again, very deep mortar joints. And this was an odd condition. We couldn't quite figure out what it was. So you see this old copper between the stones. It looks like it might have been someone's attempt a long time ago at flashing, but it's in an odd location for it to be doing much for the coping itself, and it would just create a weird line in the building. So don't really think that this is doing much as far as weatherability and water tightness of the wall. So that's why there's this drip edge below. Again, very deep bed joints. You have some open joints between the stones. Here we have the lead T-cap, and down here we have old mortar. So like I said, because this isn't really set fully in sealant, the water can get in here and hope it hits this flashing and comes out the face. Here we almost have no bed joint between the stones. So it's very uneven as far as the insulation goes. And it's understandable with the kind of rough surface of the masonry and the walls and the older stone, that you're going to have varying mortar joints. So it's just something to be aware of, that some joints are going to deteriorate faster than others. Again, significant amount of water staining coming off this. So in our report, we kind of include evaluations as far as our opinion as to why we think these leaks and other areas of damage are occurring. So it's kind of just a summary of what I've been talking about this entire time, as far as open joints, stone deterioration, lack of flashings, all that kind of stuff that can cause kind of a chain reaction that leads to ultimately water getting into the building itself. So I'm just going to scroll ahead to our recommendations. So we broke out our recommendations. We focused mainly on the service wing and the terrace above the breakfast room as priority 1. And we did that because that was where the areas where the most significant moisture damage was occurring. But then we kind of took very similar scope and extended that out for the remainder of the building, just because we saw similar conditions on the other facades that might not be leaking right now, but could potentially cause water issues in the future. So we just kind of wanted to give you almost an idea of what the rehabilitation scope would be, should you want to continue some of these recommendations and carry them across the rest of the building. So on the service wing, we recommended taking up the copings and actually putting in a through wall flashing, resetting the copings, making sure all the anchors and pins that these copings are set on are fully sealed off and watertight. You could go back and put the lead caps on for an aesthetic appearance, or you can just go in with sealant joints. But mainly we wanted to make sure that there was water protection between those copings and the wall itself. Like I mentioned, replacing the lead T caps so that they're set in a full bed of sealant and they cover the joints fully. Again, those can be switched out for a sealant joint. The lead T caps will be less of a maintenance issue. Sealant joints do need to be replaced, every 10 to 15 years. It doesn't, sealant doesn't last forever. So the lead T cap would be a more durable solution, provided it's installed properly. Mentioned replacing or repairing damaged limestone copings. Did not find any significant deterioration of the copings themselves, like cracks or spalls or anything like that, but there might be some locations where there's, minor cracking that needs to be patched or a minor spall repair, anything like that. At the windows, we recommended taking out a portion of the brick above and installing flashing above the windows, kind of like what they tried to do at those second floor windows, but actually terminating it properly at the back and making sure that there's end dams on the side, making sure that everything is fully terminated and flashed in a manner that it catches the water and brings it out to the face of the building. Cutting out or pointing any deteriorated mortar joints in the brick, but we do recommend cutting out and repointing all of the mortar joints in the limestone. So since we saw pretty significant damage in all of the joints, in all of the limestone areas, we would recommend just doing a full repointing of those, because a lot of issues might happen where you point an area and then the area right next to it starts to deteriorate. So just makes sense to us to do a full repointing of those areas. With the brick, it was very sporadic what we saw as far as deteriorated mortar joints, so that could be more of a spot repointing. Any areas where we saw displaced stones, we would want to take those off, look at the anchorage, install new anchorage, and reset the stones. Obviously, since they've started to, displace from the wall assembly, that would be a concern, a safety concern, a durability concern, a water infiltration concern. So that's definitely something that needs to be taken care of. Replacing areas where brick it's cracked all the way through or spalled. Sealing around any penetrations through the wall. So mainly like what I'm talking about is where those sleeves come through the wall from the scuppers, making sure that that opening is sealed off properly. But also anywhere that pipes might have been cut through the wall, conduits, things like that, making sure that those are all sealed off properly. And then any deteriorated wood at the window frame, either replacing it if it needs to be replaced or repairing it with a wood repair material and repainting it. And then just a general cleaning of the facades, just to make sure that the staining that we see gets removed for a while. That's mainly an aesthetic thing. It's not a durability issue. It's, something that is it's just periodically, might make sense just to keep up the appearance of the building. So our recommendation for that, in our opinion, would be about $750,000 for the service wing itself, and the terrace roof itself. That is nothing else.
Karen?
Yep.
When you do some of this work and you talk about repair damaged limestone, move it, put it back in, do you run the risk of those pieces that you're pulling out deteriorating and you end up having to replace it with new stuff? I mean, is it doable to are your estimates building in some amount of funds for if you can't just reset it, but you have to put new limestone in?
Yeah, we carry a contingency in all of our estimates. So if there's any condition that we find that's not able to be repaired in the manner that we originally assumed, that would be covered. Typically, I mean, if we do pull off a piece of stone and it can't be reset, replacing it is not necessarily an issue. There's nothing crazy on here as far as the profiles of the stone that would be difficult to replicate or anything like that.
So you can match them. I mean, if you have
Yeah.
to put in the one, you can match it.
Yeah, I mean, this being obviously a historic building, we have to be careful about what we replace old materials with. They would most likely want us to replace in kind. So if we're taking off limestone, replace with limestone as opposed to precast. Brick needs to match, obviously, in appearance and size, like any metals and things like that we take off. We would have to possibly go back with copper flashing or some kind of pre-coated copper flashing or something like that, just to maintain the aesthetic appearance of the the building itself. We don't want to start putting modern materials on something, on a historic building. So, but yeah, obviously we would assess all that when we take a stone off, whether it could be replaced, but we wouldn't want to make sure that we look at the underlying issues behind it to make sure that we're not creating another issue. So making sure that we're installing anchors properly, that what we're anchoring into is solid, a whole bunch of stuff that goes into that. But we did add that to our estimate.
And this estimate kind of would seal that section where we have the biggest water issue. Does this number include any funds to repair I mean, this is the outside of the building, anything on the inside where we have all those plaster issues and the bubbling and all that stuff? Are there funds in there to kind of bring it back, the interior, or is this just exterior?
This is just exterior because, you know, we can't be sure about like what the plans are for those particular spaces. You know, if the plan is to, you know, reopen those spaces for use or anything like that, you know, obviously the plaster and things like that would need to be repaired. But those spaces are, I believe, are not in use at all right now. So that would have to be worked out as far as what the plans would be for that. So no, we didn't include that because we would basically be kind of throwing a number out there that might not be really representative of what the future plans might be.
I just want to make sure this is just the outside. This is
This is
fixing
just
the
the
outside. We have no further damage inside.
Right.
Erin, I had a question. One of the suggestions, and I understand there's no weep holes anywhere at Waveney, you know, so to allow for water to exit the building. Could you, as in, like, if we wanted to take an interim step and not take all the lintels off and replace all the lintels and put the copper flashing through, which, you know, we're not sure what that could do to other surrounding areas or itself. Would you ever recommend doing weep holes to start to see if that eradicates most of the water? And then, I mean, obviously we're gonna have to see, there's all kinds of cracking and sealing issues that we have to do. It's more that I'm concerned about removing all the lintels and replacing them. So I just wanted to see if that would be could we do that first and then reevaluate, or do you have to do it all at once?
So weep holes help when there's proper flashing as well to stop that water, to allow the water to be directed towards the weeps. So without doing that flashing work above the windows, I don't think necessarily think the weeps are going to help. You also have 4 wides almost of solid masonry before you get to like that interior terracotta, that unless you were going to if you were just going to put weeps in that first width of brick, it's really not going to do much.
What's a weep?
It's a little hole
little
that
hole so
allows
it's
the
a
water to
drain?
get out.
It's like
And I guess that's normal in construction now. They
Yeah.
do those weep holes, but there are none at Wake.
because it's old. Yeah.
It's old.
Yeah, so well, it's also solid masonry. So usually weep holes or weep vents would go into the mortar joints in like a brick veneer. So that's when you kind of have an airspace between the exterior width of brick and whatever the backup material is. So here we have solid masonry, and obviously everything was built solid masonry back, you know, when this was built, because they were relying on the mass of the wall to prevent the water from getting in, and, you know, hoping it would dry out before it got to the interior of the building. So that's why you don't see a lot of flashings. You're not going to see weep vents or anything like that in buildings of this age. So I don't necessarily know just putting weeps above those window locations would really do all that much, because if the water is getting in at the coping level or at the limestone level above, it's getting behind wherever the weep would be. So there's really nothing to direct the water to those weeps. You could install the flashing above the windows and put the weeps in to help a little bit, but because there's such a massive masonry, I don't think it's going to really do everything you're hoping it would do. I just want to make sure we're not recommending replacing the copings in any way. We're just saying remove, flash, reset. Just wanted to make that clear.
Hey, Aaron, before you move on, can you go back to page 11?
of your presentation and bring up that map again of the building where
Yep.
you've highlighted the areas of concern?
Yes.
I think it's an important visual here to see that $750,000 is literally taking care of one-tenth of the building or 1/8 of, I mean, it's this very small area there, just so everybody knows what we're talking about.
So, I mean, if you were kind of going to break up the recommendations and do what was really needed first, I would say it's a toss up between doing the copings, just doing the copings, and then hoping that that stops the water and maybe doing the repointing at the limestone. But I think maybe the priority would be the flashing above the windows. Because we know, water's going to get in somehow, right? But we want to prevent it from getting in at these openings because that's where everything seems to be concentrated. So I would say the first priority would be addressing those limestone joints in the facades and putting in the flashing. And then, you could move on to the next thing with the copings. I just know that given the way these are constructed without the flashing below and these lead caps that are questionable, that if they're not already causing issues, they're going to cause issues. So if you were looking to do basically like an emergency repair, I would say focus on the flashings at the windows and the repointing at the limestone.
So to do that, do you have to kind of scaffold the whole area to do that work? I mean, I'm just thinking when you break it up, if you have to spend a ton of money on the setup.
Here, I'll show you.
Yeah, what do you actually do?
They could scaffold it, but it's only 2 stories high. So, I mean, we were able to access those areas with a lift. Let me just go to the photo that shows you that elevation. So this is actually the lift that we used. So we got to these areas very easily with the lift. So, on this facade, anywhere over here, I think it would be very easy to access the building with a lift. And they can isolate the areas because we don't want them to open up this entire length of wall all at once, because they have to shore up the brick above, right? So they would probably do a window at a time where they can go in and, open up the brick above that window, install the flashing. Like we could do something similar where they continued the flashing all the way across, but again, it would be done in sections. So I don't see them having to fully scaffold this. We kind of leave that up to the contractor as far as what they think is most efficient. Elsewhere on the building, anything on the south elevation would probably have to be scaffolded because they cannot get a lift in here with the terrace and the landscaping. Here we were able to access pretty easily with a lift. So likely they would be able to do that as well. Anything that's kind of over grass areas is a little bit difficult because the ground is uneven, obviously subject to moisture, things like that. So that's what I'd say, probably half and half. That makes sense. I mean, there is an efficiency in doing things all at once because you're not paying multiple times for a contractor to mobilize on site, deliver materials, things like that. But understood, trying to be as economically feasible as possible, you might want to take a more phased approach to the whole building. So that was kind of like why we broke it out. We tried to focus on the service wing, but even the service wing stuff can be broken out into scope items to tackle at different times. But because there's such a significant amount of moisture infiltration here, we definitely would want to focus on this elevation and the 2 elevations on the opposite side.
Because the kitchen itself is the kitchen and the terrace areas that are under there. That's how far down that water's come in. I mean,
we think
that
that
area is that.
Yeah, so the issue in the kitchen over here in this corner, I think is probably more related to, let me scroll down, apologies for scrolling fast, is more related to this kind of condition. So that window is below us here. This is the 2nd floor window where they have that flashing that doesn't fully terminate against the backup. But then further down, we have that window where there's no flashing above, but we have all these issues with the stone where the joints are open. The stone is displaced. So I think it's probably more of a wall issue here as opposed to necessarily directly above the windows. Because if you follow this all the way down, you'll end up, I can go back. You will end up here. Like right here, that corner is right there.
Yep, yep,
Oh,
yep,
wow.
yep.
Okay.
And that's why the weather's been
Mhm.
blasting that way.
Well, I mean, my point was that the servants corner, the quarters upstairs, they haven't been used and it's not a finished area. The areas that concern for me are the new areas that are finished that you're getting this water in, like the bathrooms upstairs and, some of the stuff that we've seen, some of that happening quickly. So those are the areas that I would think you want to address really quickly before there's any more damage.
Yeah, and I think with those areas, the one that's in the bathroom and the one that's on the other locations on I believe the second floor are related to those conditions where we saw the mortar joints deteriorating right at the window head. Likely we have some water coming in from the wall above, but also water, wind driven rain can go right into those joints and go right into the building. So I think it's a combination of that. So you could also do a very targeted repair or flashing installation at those exact locations. And it's kind of like a prescription for how to address other areas of the building when you run into those similar issues. Again, it might not be as efficient to, mobilize a contractor every single time you have an issue, as opposed to maybe handling an area of the building all at once, and then, moving on to another area of the building when you have another issue. So there's various ways that you can phase this to kind of make sure that you tackle all of these issues. We were kind of just doing a snapshot of it and what we would recommend to do, right now to address the issues that we currently see and possibly prevent future issues. But those future issues, you can, hold off on those until you have a better idea of, again, the future of this building, anything like that. So, really the choice is up to you, but we kind of try to give you an idea of everything that needs to be done full scope.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, thank you. I have a feeling we may, Erin, be needing to have another conversation, but given that it's almost 10 o'clock,
Yeah.
We probably need to move on to Lapham and then.
Sorry, I hit the wrong
So
button.
the main house, though, it's important to talk about that for
Right.
a sec. That number's big.
Yeah, I mean, with Lapham, we were talking about mainly repointing the chimneys, and then doing some work at those copings. If they are fully flashed underneath, that's great. I think we would still want to remove some of them to make sure that's the case, and reset them in a new mortar bed and handle the joints to make sure that those are sealed off as well. But are there any other questions?
I mean, Lapham seemed pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, obviously the scope there is much smaller. We did extend it out to take care of those issues that we might see at the copings, aside from the chimneys. That's another instance where you're not having leaks now, you're not having issues at the moment, but given the condition of those and given how they're constructed, you might. But we wanted to give you the recommendations for those for future reference as far as what might need to be done at some point if you do run into issues.
We haven't actually we walked through Waveney extensively, but we haven't walked through Lapham to look at damage. Can you comment, Tiger, or someone who's been in there at Lapham? How much damage is going on at Lapham, and what's the urgency of getting this done?
Well, there's always an urgency because we have water in the building.
Right.
So, and
How long have we had it there? Has it been?
Bill's not here, he left. We've had it for some time. We've had an issue from new construction to old construction for quite a period of time. And then this development around the chimneys has developed more recently. That's why we had money in the budget to take care of just the chimneys themselves. We've been tackling the issue between the two, old and new, for some time. We get a good amount of water in the basement, And we're seeing some staining and some problems in some of the areas, not necessarily the areas that are frequented by the public, but by the staff. So our feeling is we would like to, take care of some of those issues, predominantly the ones that she's prioritized first, around the chimneys themselves, to then prevent that water and then seal up the building.
And both these buildings have relatively new roofs on them, right? I mean, they're,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's amazing how we've spent all this money, repaired the roofs, and then we sort of push the water off the roof and it goes into, other places. So.
Aaron, the overall state of Waveney, the house, is that typical, atypical for building of its age? I mean, is it just, are we talking, we just got a, 100-year-old building plus, or and
Yeah, that's a lot of it. Obviously, it's an older building. It's been there for over 100+ years. So it's typical deterioration we would see from weathering with a masonry building of that age, but also just the type of construction. Obviously, construction technology has advanced, building sciences has advanced as far as figuring out building envelopes and how they function, and the best ways to make sure that they function both structurally, as far as weatherability, energy efficiency, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, things are more advanced. So I would say a majority of the conditions that we're observing is just due to the age of the building and the type of construction that was available at that time.
And if we are able to get a plan to address these water issues, address the mortar issues, the envelope, that sets these buildings up to be, I'd say, watertight, or the envelope secure for an extended period of time. I mean, it's just like we invest now, are we kind of like setting us up, we're good for 20 years, 30 years, with, obviously you have to look at stuff all the time and you might have little things, but I mean, to do this stuff, kind of like we put this very nice roof on that's supposed to last a long time. That sets us up for how long in terms of?
I mean, I don't want to put a strict number on it, but definitely, I mean, our repairs are looking at addressing kind of some of the systemic issues and the issues that we see with the wall construction and just the way things are detailed. Obviously, masonry construction is going to last a lot longer than other types of construction. So, with good maintenance, proactive maintenance and proactive observations and things like that, I would say these repairs could last as long as, the building's been there. It's okay. Trying to prevent the continued accelerated deterioration of some of these things and remedying some of the issues just generally with the construction and the vintage of the building. So if done properly, if maintained properly, you're looking 50+ years.
Okay.
So Aaron, though, that extra part of your comment is maintained properly.
Yes.
So what does that mean to you, as far as, is that like an annual every 5 years, obviously we got to relook at crack, mortar issues and things like that. So if you could just kind of outline a maintenance, what a proactive maintenance.
I would say, obviously, you want to kind of do cursory looks at the building after, if there's major weather events, if we have blizzards or anything like that, where we have a ton of snow sitting on buildings, or ice storms or anything like that, that might cause immediate damage to the building, is to take a look at it then. But also, I would say, I mean, looking at it as a guide, like we do, we have an office in New York City, and they have a program where the facades need to be inspected every 5 years. So I think that's probably a good parameter to use to kind of take a look at, conditions that might become issues. And those can just be a visual inspections, similar to what we did, where we look around the building, see if there's any potential areas where we do see that deterioration occurring in some locations that weren't addressed as far as repair work goes. Roofs were very, we try to emphasize to building owners and facility staff to do almost quarterly inspections of those, to make sure you don't have any damage or debris that happened in the previous quarter, making sure that you're as weather tight as possible for winter, before winter. And also making sure, again, after any major weather events, that there isn't any damage, there's not debris collected on the roof. So yeah, I would say probably every the facade, and you know, barring any other issues, you could probably do every 6 months even for the roof, but you know, we try to make sure that people are as proactive as possible with that.
Aaron, what's the industry standard in terms of opening old buildings like this up? I mean, every time we've opened up a 100-year-old building, it always surprises us and causes us a lot more angst because we find things that we have to add, or we go over budget. And then down the road, you say, well, why did you do it like that? Because many of the repairs that we're looking at this morning were, or a lot of the damage are repairs that weren't done properly. So I guess that's a hard question to answer. But you know, when you look back at the choices that were made over the years, you say, what if we had done it this way, or what if we had done it that way? And I know it's a Monday morning quarterback kind of question, but things like you say, well, it'd be easy. Let's just put pins into the masonry. Well, as soon as I hear that, I'm like, okay, we're drilling in, we're putting pins in, and somebody else is sitting in these chairs, you know, 15 years later saying, why did you guys use pins? That was the worst thing in the world. You just damaged the building, you know? So, I mean, when you tear into something like this, it's a concern.
Right. I mean, I will say that that's always one of our main focuses, is to make sure that anything that we are doing to the building, we're not causing further damage to any underlying adjacent materials, interior finishes, anything like that. That being said, you know, obviously there might be standards previously, you know, this is the way they did it. And unfortunately, we've learned things now and say, well, this is the way we do it now, and this is the way we feel is the best option as far as a repair might be. So it's difficult to kind of fault the people years and years ago, because that might have been the way that everybody, you know, said to do it. And now we're doing it the way we, you know, our expertise lends us to feel that this is the way it should be done. We're taking probably a lot more into consideration now as far as the whole kind of wall system.
Have materials gotten that much better though, so that the repairs we do now are going to have a longer shelf life?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, definitely the patching mortars and things like that are better quality. Stone is stone. I mean, it's been here for thousands of years, and it's going to be the same, you know, the same stone. But as far as the attachments, as far as the materials that we use to waterproof, flashing materials and things like that, everything's gotten much more advanced. You know, the introduction, like even, you know, mention of the weep tubes, like the old kind of weep tubes at one point was just like a rope kind of weep, and then it was a tube with a rope in it, and now it's just an open tube. And then now we actually have masonry cell vents that actually go the full height of the brick, so they actually allow the water to come out, but they also prevent like insects and things like that from getting into the wall. So every kind of, you know, generation has advancements on old techniques and old materials that work better, that last longer.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. I'm sure this is one of many questions that we're going to have. I just have one question. Should we do 22 first and then take the break? Okay. So we need Cheryl. We're gonna
Aaron.
do,
Really
if I could ask to move item 22, just so we can get some people out of here. We got a lot going on in town, and then we're gonna take a 5-minute break. If that's all right,
Sure.
and then come back and finish the rest of the agenda. So we're just waiting for Cheryl to come back in. Okay. Thank you. So Cheryl, you want to come on up?
Good morning. We are here today to ask for a promotion. We are looking to move Lou Boise from operator 2 to equipment operator 3/crew leader, and Jimmy Peck from equipment operator 3 crew leader to the interim superintendent of highway. And I have them both with me today.
Thank you for sitting through. It was an interesting presentation though, very interesting. You guys have any questions?
No, thank you for the work on behalf of the town. That's
Yeah.
really, we know it just doesn't, those of us sitting close, we know it just doesn't happen. So,
And
and the
Mosey
amount
is-
of details people have to handle, it's amazing. for
And
our
Mosey
benefit.
has big boots to fill,
Right.
so.
Yeah, yes. Well, I just wanted to thank everybody here, all three of you, and please communicate to all your colleagues our thanks for all the work yesterday and ongoing and during the storm. It's a lot. I've seen some of the pictures. Moses sent me some of the pictures. Tiger sent me some of the pictures. It's I know it's a lot. So thank you very much. This is where we really see all that you do for our community. So we appreciate it. Okay, if I could get a motion to approve a request from the Human Resources Director for the following promotions. You're going to say your name, so I say it properly. Lou.
Oh, boys.
Boyce.
Charles.
Charles. I still don't know how to spell it.
Okay, so Lou Boyce from Operator 2 to Equipment Operator 3 and Crew Leader. And then James Peck, which is weird for me to say, from Equipment Operator 3 to Crew Leader to, and Crew Leader to Interim Superintendent of Highway. Do I have a motion?
Second for motion. Sorry. I'm anxious.
Whatever. Yes.
And a second,
Second, yes.
and it's unanimous.
Thank
Thank
you.
you and
Thank you, guys.
congratulations.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
All right. Okay, so if I could get a 5-minute break and we will come back. We have Kerma here. We need to do one thing real quickly
That's
and
fine,
then come on out. Okay. we're back. Okay, thank you, everyone. We are now on item 6, New Canaan Police Department equipment. Chief.
Good morning. This request is for our TASER equipment, a few new TASER units and the additional equipment and cartridges for it. It's been budgeted for, and the amount is $14,989.43.
Can I just ask you, when I was reading this, how long do these tasers last? And
So we're only replacing 4, so we replace a few at a time.
Mhm.
They last for 4, 5, 6 years, and then they just kind of, they're computer based, so the inside has got some computer components, and they're electrical, obviously, and officers wear them all the time. We have a cache where most of the officers have them, their own individual ones, but we also have a pool where some of the other officers utilize them. So they get used quite a bit or worn quite a bit, so they do wear out. So they do have
so it's like a 4 or 5 year.
lifespan. I believe it's about 4, 5, 6
And
years.
how many do we have total in inventory? I'm
not
sorry,
sure.
I just,
Yeah, I think we're around 40
okay.
of them.
So we're looking at replacing 4. So.
Then we get additional cartridges because they have to
Okay.
use the
Yeah,
cartridges
yeah,
to.
yeah.
So
recertify
along this
every
line,
year.
there's a big line item here is for 100 cartridges. I mean, I'm assuming we don't really use these.
No, you have to use them. You have to fire 2 a year to maintain certification for it. Each officer that's certified in these. So
Yeah,
it's,
so there's training involved to use.
Right, so if there's 100 cartridges and 50 officers,
Yeah.
it's 2 each. Okay, so it's not that we use
that's-
them,
Yeah.
it's
Year's
just
worth
that, okay.
Are you
So that's
asking,
like a
are you asking
year's
for a
worth
demo?
of
Are you asking for a
training.
demo?
I was hoping you would see that.
No, I don't want to demo that.
All right, so it's not like we're, this is
We're
training,
not
it's
yet.
not, we're not tasing people, right? Okay, so, all right, okay,
I would read about that.
So that would be about a year's worth of
training.
training. The cartridges.
Right.
Okay, for all the,
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
All right, so,
All right, cool.
all right. Any other questions?
That's it.
Could I get a motion to approve a request from the Canaan Police Department to purchase tasers and accessories from Axon Enterprise in the amount of $14,989.43?
So moved.
Second,
It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Russ, Motorola service contract.
Russ, I
Good.
borrowed your pen. Thank you.
Oh, yes, no worries.
No, it's a division of emergency management pen. Very, very nice. Have to give it
Building
back.
call and I saw, no worries at all. So this is a request for us to pay year 4 of 5 of our public safety radio service contract with Motorola. This is the 4th of 5-year contract. This provides technical support and on-site response, preventative maintenance, infrastructure repair, and also advanced replacement of hardware and software to such replacements over the contract life. This contract runs from July 2021 to June 30th of 2026. Again, repair, maintenance, advanced replacement of town-owned Motorola hardware and software for the VHF public safety radio system, which is utilized in daily operations by New Canaan Police, Fire, EMS, Public Works, and the CERT team. And the total is $139,225.47.
So Russ, I just have one question, and I know we've talked about it a couple times. So this is the 4th of a 5-year contract. So we're, we've signed up to do this, and we've got this year and next year to pay. So at what point though, will we sort of have more, this is for the radios, we're buying radios, but we're also looking to potentially move over to the state system.
Yeah, it's something that we've been analyzing and our neighbors have done, and having run the economics. So we own our own system. We own there are 6 radio sites. There's a prime site. There's all the tech that goes behind this, and the system works. We have no complaints with it. We invested in it in 2019, 2020, and it works and meets our needs. And our neighbors are moving to the state system, so they don't own the backbone. They don't own all the other parts to it. The state has a 24/7 man site that monitors it, the health of it, and everything else. At this point, looking at Wilton is probably the most recent to have moved over. They're switching right now. It was in the $3 to $5 million range for us to move to that system, which is again a tremendous amount of money. I do not personally feel that it is worth that kind of a move, even though the benefit long-term is you end up paying less for sustainment because most of the infrastructure is owned by the state of Connecticut. When you just figure at even taking it, assuming we don't know in the when this contract expires what Motorola's sustainment cost will be, but I just took a guesstimate of 15% year over year, which is aggressive, but knowing Motorola, probably not too far out of the box.
I was going to say, because I remember that was one of the things where you're like, we own it, but we are beholden to Motorola, and so they've got like this monopoly position.
Yeah, there are other players in the industry, but they
we have their stuff.
We have their stuff, correct. And so even assuming that, you don't see it equalizing that $3 to $5 million for until 2035 or longer.
Although, we should probably just for an exercise, because we have another year, and and let's just do a cash flow analysis and kind of look at on the escalator, and with the, if you present value that over 10 years, let's look at that and see sort of break it,
Yeah, and then we have time to do the analysis, right? So that we don't do it tomorrow, but you have time.
And we're
to
obligated for another year, so it's not.
I've done a rough version of that without actually time value, money and all that, but assuming that every 5 years, new contract, 15% increase over the contract, it is until 2039 that you reach 3.5 million of outflows versus an initial cost of trying to move to the state system right now. The answer is the benefits to the state system is interoperability. As you see with any critical incident, we're a small community, we rely on other units coming in to assist us. But I think that's displaced by the fact that we're buying the tri-band or all band radios in small bites every year. And those are for your command staff, who are the people who are going to be talking to the individuals from other incoming units. So that buying those, they're not cheap. They're $10,000 a piece, but you don't need them for every single police officer, every single firefighter, to command staff. And so I think right now that's the path we go. And we watch carefully to see Wilton and Fairfield and Westport to see, because again, they just went on board in the last couple of years. Wilton is going on board now to see what their burn rate with the Motorola contract with less equipment is versus where they were before. That's my recommendation as it stands currently.
Okay.
So we can let them be the guinea pigs and see how it works.
There's a lot of benefits to the state system, but I don't think based upon the mighty cost to switch over, it's worth it. Unless, and I've been having discussions with Westcog, I've been having discussions with our state reps and others to say, look, it makes sense. People should move to the state infrastructure. There's a lot of benefits to it, but the state or through federal funds, through Homeland Security grants and other things, they have to offset some of that capital expenditure for municipalities in order to make it palatable.
Sure.
And this is 11.5 a month, basically. So that's I know that it sounds like a lot, but it's a bargain compared to what you would be paying otherwise.
Well, and we spent in the order of, when we got our own system, it was 750,000 in FY 2016-17, I think was the first bit. And then we spent 2.5 million in 2019, 2020 to move to this system. So we made a substantial, this, much like other things, sustains that, right? And it's a digital system. So as is everything, eventually if you don't replace the hardware, eventually you can't get the latest patches and then they sunset support. So you have to sustain it. And I think that keeping this contract is preferable to pushing that off the state, but at a very substantial capital hurdle.
Do you know when like Wilton and Westport recently, because what you just told me, the $2.5 million that we spent in 2019, if we had, looked at the state system then and decided then, that 3.5 you did. And what was, just come up, because I kind of remember these conversations, but I just want to understand, because that was not an insignificant outlay on our part.
Yeah, and at the time, that was 5-6 years ago, the high band, the state band, I think the only agency close to us that had it was Stanford.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the benefits weren't there and,
Okay.
and the cost was significant. And to go to that 800 megahertz band, it didn't make sense because not enough of our neighboring agencies, it wasn't as widely adopted as it is today.
Okay. So we may just have been unlucky in the timing, whereas Westport and Wilton needed to upgrade. And so the timing.
And you also lose control. Let's be realistic. Every time you want to program your radios or change anything, you have to get the state's permission and there's a long process. So you do lose some element of control of your system as well by moving to that. So,
and at the time we still needed to upgrade our system because our system was just one broadcast site, Waveney, where we didn't have.
Spend a chunk of money even
Okay.
to flip over.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Any other questions?
Nope.
All right. If I could get a motion to approve a request from the Emergency Management Director to renew the annual Motorola Public Safety Radio service contract in the amount of $139,225.47 beginning July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
And Russ, if you do have time, I think what Deanna's point is like over the next year, when there's time to go to do a deep dive in terms of cost benefit on these, it'd be great.
no, I've got that, and I provide you today just some of the background material, but over the next year in particular, as we're coming up to that contract, plus the other part is to get Motorola to tell me what that estimate is, which thus far I've been unsuccessful in attempting to get from them. I also requested from Norcom, who are our partners, who are great, by the way, I want to make sure it's very clear. I want for them to provide me every single service call, every single software update, and every single hardware update that has been done as part of this contract to date, because I want to see, does it add up in value of parts, equipment, and software to what they amortize, and you don't really see the, the back, the fundamentals of that calculation when you sign the contract initially.
Right.
So I want to make sure we're getting our value out of what we're paying for.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Irrigation pump replacement. Ryan and Todd.
Good morning. On behalf of the New Canaan Parks Department, I am here seeking approval to enter into contracts with Foley's Pump Service to replace our irrigation well pump and controller for our main well at Waveney Park. So this system irrigates the athletic fields at Waveney Park. The existing well pump and controller are about 10 years old and they're not functioning at present. This replacement is the most efficient and only option for our irrigation system to function again. The total work, including materials, comes out to $17,008.20, and the money is available and budgeted within the park's operational budget.
How did the actual contract costs compare with what we budgeted? Did we come in above or below? Do you remember? This was in this was in the budget, you know, do you have any idea? If it-
I'm not quite sure.
If
Just
it's
curious.
budgeted, it's either at or below.
True.
It's,
She was just curious if we have some money left over, because we have other things that we need to do, so.
yeah, we definitely have money left over too. So that was a concern too, that I spoke to John Howe about and moving forward because it's early in the year. So
Okay.
but we're in good shape there.
It's good.
No, that just in general, when people bring this, it'd be great to know, this is what we budgeted, we came in a little lower, just if people think of it, it's just helpful.
Okay.
Not crucial. Oh, here he comes.
So in the budget, there's budgeted $100,000 a year for irrigation repairs. This is taken out of that.
Okay.
Portion. So to try to then, as they go through and the thought is now to try to do one system at a time. So this is part of that estimate. It's $100,000 that you budgeted annually for this.
So what you're saying is you couldn't come in and say, we budgeted
20,000.
20,000.
Yeah.
20,000, we're at 17 versus, 15 versus 17.
All right, so we have 100,000 to be addressed for irrigation. We'll get as much done as we can.
Just to go off of that too, this was kind of a freak thing where the controller was damaged. The technician came out and noticed a short going down the well. So it's something we just had to do. And in order to have the irrigation system running again, it's a priority. So sure.
Although with all the water we're getting, I'm not sure we're gonna need irrigation for a while. Okay,
There's a plus.
any further questions?
Nope.
If not, if I could get a motion to approve a request from the Parks Department to enter into contract with Foley's Pump Service, Inc. in the amount of $17,008.20. The project entails a replacement of the irrigation well pump and controller at the main irrigation well at Waveney Park.
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Kelly, Ives, and Tucker.
Kelly is on via Zoom. Kelly is the event coordinator for the New Canaan Football Club soccer. And Kelly has come to us similar to at your last meeting when Hillary from the Carriage Barn came for a request. They are hoping to have their welcome back event for the families, and included in that is a request to bring in a food truck and also to have some soccer gear being sold at the event, which does require your approval per the charter. So Kelly can answer any questions. The date is September 6th from 5 to 7 at the Saks Fields. It looks like it's going to be fun. They're going to have soccer games, food truck, as I say, sports gear sold, and an ice cream truck. And all of that would be obviously approved through the health department and has been through the special events committee as well.
I think it's a great idea, having had a former soccer player that was long out as this, their selectmen. This would have been a nice way to celebrate the start of the season. So kudos to all of you for all the efforts to sort of bring some fundraising to the club, and also just a lot of enthusiasm around the sport. So I think it's great.
Great. Thank you.
So the gear that you sell, are you guys, are you going to be able to make some money off it that goes back into the program?
Yes. The vendors we would likely use do put a certain percentage back into the club for sure.
And the New Canaan vendors.
Yeah.
New Canaan.
Yes.
Great. Good.
Like 84 Sports, that type of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
All right.
Okay.
Great
Any
idea,
other
guys.
questions?
September, that's gonna be a busy weekend. There's lots going on that weekend.
All right, if I could get a motion to approve a request from the New Canaan Football Club along with the Board of Education to approve up to two, Tucker, really quickly. Has the Board of Education already approved this?
Jay
Okay.
has given me the
Okay.
They defer to the board of selectmen.
Okay, perfect. If I could get a motion to approve a request from New Canaan Football Club along with the Board of Education to approve up to 2 beverage vendors along with a local sports equipment vendor to sell products at the New Canaan Football Club kickoff party on September 6th on the soccer fields at Saks Middle School from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Nice to see the conversion from soccer club to football club. We're getting
Very European of us. Very European.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, Kelly.
All right, Tiger.
All right, thank you very much. So this first item is just a PO increase for materials testing lab, for Connecticut materials testing. You had previously done a $10,000 PO for us. That was based upon what our previous experience had been for the past couple of years with sidewalk and paving work. This year we did an inordinate amount of work in the summer and previous that required, we had sidewalk installation on Old Stamford Road. We had sidewalk installation at East School, West School, paving throughout the town, paving in the 3 separate parking lots where we required testing. So we are fit to exceed that original allotment. So we would be asking for an additional $10,000 to carry us through the remainder of the year.
What was the original?
It was
allotment?
$10,000.
So this is a doubling.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna need the double, but I just, I didn't want to have to come back a third time. So I was,
And where are the funds within your budget? Is this under the?
this is in the pavement management program.
management? Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, if not, if I could get a motion to approve a request from the Department of Public Works to enter into a contract with Connecticut Materials Testing, Inc., the amount of $10,000. The project entails a material testing of various projects.
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous. Thank you. And Joe,
Good morning.
good morning.
So I'm here for the police facility renovation, material testing. The Department of Public Works is requesting authorization to increase the contract with special testing labs to perform material testing as required by the project's statement of special inspections. So several factors have contributed to the need for additional testing, mainly unforeseen conditions within the existing building. Items like there's the high footing that we talked about as an unforeseen condition that drove the need in the rear addition to dice it up into more phases. So more phases means more inspections because they have to come out, but that keeps the schedule moving along. So it made economic sense to continue to slice up the back half so that we could maintain schedule. And also load bearing wall repairs within the building. So, and the funds are available in the soft cost budget. We will go over by about $11,000 with that particular line item, but there's other savings in the soft cost budget that will cover that. So there's not a hit to contingency.
Hey, by the way, with these tests, we have any of the tests come back showing that we had to fix something or we had?
We had a couple concrete tests that didn't come up to strength on the first test, but they break them at certain increments.
Okay.
And then subsequent tests proved that the material
You're good. Right.
had its strength.
It's just like more time to cure for the material.
Yeah, it gives more time to cure, and then it's supposed to reach a certain percentage of its strength over the first 28 days.
28 days is the marker. You start at 7 and then you see where you are at 7, and that usually gives you a feeling of where you'll be at 28. Sometimes you're a little low on 7, but at 28 is the time.
Okay.
Does the weather impact it? The type of weather you have? Is it humid or rainy? Does that mess up?
Not really. I mean, the concrete cylinders actually are taken at the time. So the water contact and the slump and those things affect the overall strength, but they go into a curing
slump?
box.
Slump.
The slump, the amount of water in it.
Okay.
If it's soupy
I'm
concrete or
learning
not.
so many words today. This is great.
Yeah. So those things affect it, but everything has been going well, and we've been doing really well with the special inspections. They're actually going to reduce some of the requirements because we've been doing well with, do we have to test every cube of mortar for every operation? And like we're using a spec mix, so and all the testing so far has worked out really well. So the structural engineer is going to reduce some of the basically the need to do it as often.
Okay, so we're offsetting future testing by doing more testing now.
Okay, and just because you're here, remind me the planned completion date is still scheduled for fall 2025? So
Yep. Spring, well, right now we're saying fall of 2025, and I've brought it up to summer of 2025.
Okay.
And right now we're trending ahead of schedule for that.
Completion is estimated significantly before that.
Yes, it's in the spring. It's just the commissioning and again, it's a police building, so it's not like you can go in there and perform testing and balancing after they're moved in and there's prisoners in there.
So fall 2025 is when they're out of Locust Avenue and they're in.
Hopefully summer, but yes.
Okay.
This fall is what we're currently projecting, but we're trending better than that.
All right.
Good.
And we're also, just so you know, we a big milestone, we just swung the last piece of steel. So we're done with structural steel for the building.
Oh, great. Great.
Good
Great.
news.
Okay. All right. So if there are no further questions, if I could get a motion to approve a request from the Department of Public Works to increase the contract with Special Testing Labs in the amount of $25,000 in order to perform materials testing as part of the police facility renovations project.
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
you.
All right, striping.
So this next is just a blanket purchase order for the year with safety markings for $25,000. Safety markings was the low bidder for not only the CROG procurement, that's the Capital Regional Council of Governments procurement contract, but also the state contract they're the low bid for. We've been working with them very well for 20 years or so. They're pretty much the only striping company in town. They're very well trained and knowledgeable in the manual on uniform traffic control devices. And this is for areas in town that we see that the striping is starting to need replacement, predominantly on our crosswalks and stop bars. Those are our areas of main concern. We try to replace all of our markings every 5 years. So it's along with our paving schedule, but this is outside of that. The markings will last anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So if they're only lasting about the 3-year mark due to wear, say additional vehicle travel, then we need some additional money. So this is what this is for. It's for the off paving cycle.
So it doesn't include things like the lumberyard restriping
No,
or Morse court striping, but it does include on-street striping.
That's correct. Yeah, the lumberyard striping, the parking lots we tend to bring to you in one, at the time of when it's resurfaced or when it needs to be redone. This is mainly on-road striping.
All right, I'm going to ask you I'm going to say the 3-letter word, Elm
Street, as far as repaving.
Restriping.
Fantastic. So
I know you love that question.
we're seeing an uptick in people wanting to actually redo their facilities. So we're seeing an uptick in
Another restaurant's
You
going in.
mean
That
more
means-
gas and more water and stuff? More
yes,
utilities?
yeah, and we're still waiting for Eversource Electric to move off site and be done. They're close, but they're not done yet. And the thought is that if I pave it and then they've got to cut
I
open the
know.
road.
We've been
So-
saying that for a while though. That's why.
I've been waiting for them to get out of the way. They were supposed to be out of the way last year. So we're patiently waiting. In the moment that it's done, we're going to come in with a contract. and take care
So
of
no
it.
matter what though, there's going to be businesses along the way that want to do that. I mean,
That'll be,
that's
that's the nature of the beast. Yeah. The fact that
Painful.
I pave a road and then the next day I get a call before you dig saying that somebody wants to come in and do something.
Right.
So it's really waiting for the larger drivers to come out, which is basically Eversource Electric. That when that project has been completed and they say that they're done, then we're going to come in and pave at that point in time. I can't wait for another restaurant, another facility, another, establishment coming in. We just would come in and then manage that road cut.
It is true the amount of time you drive down Elm Street where there is somebody having the street open, especially on the left side there. It seems like we blocked that up and opened it up. That must be Eversource.
That's Eversource. There's there's 2 vaults. There's one at South and Elm, and then there's one up just above the crosswalk from the Playhouse on the left-hand side. So that's this transformer upgrade that they're working on right now. The moment that's completed is the moment we'll come in and pave.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
And then redo the decorative crosswalks as well, since it's.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of town looks so great. It's just that middle part that looks all torn
Elm
up.
Street and Pine Street. Pine Street we're going to do next April.
Yeah.
And then Elm Street will be when they're off, but Pine Street's clear. We're just waiting for a good time to come in with a contract. We feel springtime is the best time. Contractors will be hungry at that time to come in and do the work.
So we're looking at basically another winter and, into the spring, basically.
Street to be done this year. Pine Street will be next year.
Okay.
All right.
All right, if I could get a motion to approve a request from the Department of Public Works to enter into a contract with Safety Markings, Inc. in the amount of $25,000 for restriping of various locations in town.
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Tiger.
Thank you.
All right, Tiger, Cemetery, Parks, School Grounds.
Blanket purchase order with Rosati Landscaping. Last year, Rosati was the low bidder for our cemetery maintenance. He's agreed to maintain his pricing for this year's worth of work through that. And he also does some additional work on our school grounds and other areas and other cemeteries that are not related. He helps us on South School with some invasive plant management and other areas. So that's the difference between the 10,000 and 5,000. So I'd like to come forward with a blanket purchase order for Rosati Landscaping for $15,000, and the funds are currently available. Excuse me.
So the school grounds is just south? It's
Present, yeah, we have a problem on that hillside with some invasives that are in there that are actually poisonous. So we're actively managing that area, and he's helping us with that
Hopefully they'll
management.
get out there before school starts.
Yes, they will.
Okay.
Yeah. That was a question that I had yesterday from the Parks Department. I said, we're coming here today, so they'll be out here.
All right, any other questions? Could I get a motion to approve a request from the Department of Public Works to enter into a contract with Rosati Landscaping in the amount of $15,000 for landscaping and maintenance of various cemeteries in town, as well as various parks and school grounds?
So moved.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Oh, we made a second page.
So we're gonna.
Dump truck.
Right, so
All right, I see the gangs coming up.
coming up.
Dump trucks.
I'll give Lou's gonna give the color. I'm gonna give the play-by-play very fast. So this first is a purchase of a Western Star dump truck, a 47X 2025 dump truck with Freightliner of Hartford. We had comparable quotes from both Farmington and Brookfield. Farmington's quote for Western Star was $283,000, and Brookfield's quote was $277,000. And we are for the same truck at the $273,000 mark. So we got
Big availability. The truck is ready on site. We don't have to wait 12 to 18 months. That's a huge factor. And we're trying to plan the fleet going forward. Beautiful truck, all stainless steel body, all Caesar body. I mean,
this will replace Unit 26, which is a 2008 with 48,320 miles on it for 17 years worth of effort. Our records for storms only go back to 2010, and since 2010 forward, it's been over 200 storms fought. So that's.
Is there a trade-in on the one we're getting rid of?
So we're going to be trading in, but that's on the next truck. So we're going to be actually trading in 2 trucks for the next truck. In order to make it underneath the budget, we had $275,000 allotted for this. So we're able to make it on this. The other truck, we had $220,000 allotted. We needed both trades to be applied to that to make the number work. So the next item on your agenda, we'll discuss that one.
So I see the comparable quotes are also from Western Star, but 2 different like dealerships, I guess. What is this?
Well, Freightliner makes a, Western Star is made by Freightliner, or vice versa.
Okay.
Vice versa. Freightliner makes Western Star.
So are we getting this from Farmington or Brookfield?
those are the towns.
Those are the
Those are the
towns.
townships.
Those are the townships that
Oh.
bid. I'm sorry, Farmington,
Oh,
Connecticut, and
okay.
Brookfield. Sorry. No, they bought trucks. They bought Western
okay.
Stars. They bought the same truck
Okay.
as we did.
Okay.
And that's the prices that they
Where
paid.
is this truck?
It is in Hartford, actually in Torrington,
Okay,
sitting there ready to.
okay. So somebody gets to take a nice trip to
Really
Torrington.
nice.
Yes.
I just know previously, and this is probably for the smaller vehicles, we talked about buying stuff locally because the servicing is easier. This servicing you guys all do in-house, is that right? I mean, is it, because I remember you talking about other trucks, it was like, okay, we could buy it from 4 towns away, but getting service is a pain.
This is the only place you can buy this truck. in the
Okay,
state.
there you go. All right.
And I see there's an extended warranty in here for $32.60. Is there a term on that? I mean, in terms of how long are they covering that? Any idea?
I believe that is that the electrical warranty? Does it say what it is?
It just says extended warranty, 32.
So it's either for Cummings
the diesel, which is gonna be 5 years. And I think if the electrical one, I think that he might have thrown that in with, I want to say that's 3. I could be wrong on that one though.
Yeah. It was $3,260 for the extended warranty, as Steve was mentioning. So,
Yeah, I was just curious, that we don't put any miles on it. It's really just the time. So how long and what that covers. And it may be a powertrain
We
coverage.
usually shake some bugs out of it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if we get it, there's a problem, we can get it back up there, get it fixed. And once we get it for 6 months or so, we get it
Bugs out of
ready to
it.
go for a snowstorm. So it's not.
Yeah.
really a problem.
And also that the thing's 3 days old, we go tamper with it. Now we own it. We ruined everything as far as Western Star knows.
Right,
you know?
right, right.
Yeah, so this is probably a separate insurance rider they have or something to cover it. All right.
All right.
With the labor costs, I'm sure that would be eaten up pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah.
All right, I'm good.
All right, if I could get an approval of a request from the Department of Public Works to enter into a contract with Western Star of Connecticut in the amount of $273,239 for the purchase of a new Western Star 47X 2025 dump truck.
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous.
Thank you.
all
All
right.
right, another
thank you.
dump truck.
So this next one is a Freightliner M2106 from Freightliner of Hartford. It is on a state contract. It was for $228,206.60. And this is where we'll be trading in the 2 vehicles. So this one is replacing a unit number 28, a 2005 truck with 62,000 miles on it and a similar storm pattern. So it's been with us for about 20 years. So if we take the trade-in values off of this vehicle for $8,200, we come to a total of $220,006.60. The unfortunate thing is that we have $220,000 available in the budget.
However,
However,
I happen to have for you.
You better give it to Ann.
I have a bank check paid out for $6.60 for the town of New Canaan.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Is this your parting retirement gift to the town?
It's done.
Different size dump trucks. Because they're 50,000.
Yes, they are.
Absolutely, yes, 2 different.
right,
Different purposes. or-
in town versus out of town, mainly.
So the life expectancy on these, we've gotten 20 years out of these older trucks. I mean, we're expecting another 20, I would think, out of this, you think, or is it?
We go 15 to 20. Yeah. So at the 15, we're usually on like a replacement at 15 years. But then it comes down to availability. So that's to Lou's point before this, the truck that we just bought is
These are both
available.
ready to go.
They're both ready to go. We bought one in 2022, December 22, that we're expecting delivery from now. So that truck has been having to hold that place. So at 15, we start that look on the truck and go from there. We're hoping for 15 to 20 from each.
And the photo is it a cabin chassis or is there a body on it?
It's
Where
body, everything.
There's a body and everything. So it's like a full dump body that's
Yep.
on there.
Right, stainless steel.
Yeah, so that'll last.
In bed, in body sander,
Oh, wow. So that's
ground control, liquid, everything.
great.
Basically, you spec out the back end and they place that on the front end on the cabin chassis. So that's why you see just the picture in the picture it shows just the cabin.
Yeah, but we're getting the whole, it's
Getting the whole thing.
setup. Okay.
But that doesn't, some of the smaller ones we have, it's almost like Legos. You change out the back. There's no changing out the back.
No, there's not.
Not on this one, no.
They're so valuable to us, this newer equipment in dialing in for our winter services year round, of course, but in the winter time when we do the liquid, we calibrate everything and these trucks just.
They do a lot of work.
So precise now that it just helps so much.
And
our winter services.
And I will say that the salesman came down and looked at our 2005 and said, "What you guys do to this? Did you spray the bottom of it?" We said, "Yeah, we actually did." And they said, "Normally we can see through floors." They're pretty happy how kind of shape the truck.
Very conscientious.
That's kind of Lou started bringing in stuff called liquid film. So as soon as the truck's in there, we film the whole bottom of them
Yeah, actually, I
keep them
think
alive.
the 28th of this, we're getting Dan Tiani, our head mechanic, is we're at a demonstration for a new product. So which is a good time. If we have 4 new trucks rolling in, we can start right from the
Mhm.
beginning before they hit any salt.
Oh,
You
great.
know,
Great.
We're trying to.
You know, we've like passed vehicles down into different departments. There's no need for a dump truck in any other area, right? I mean, there's no, I mean, for the cost of it's so cheap that, do we need one anywhere else where we could use it for any other reason?
I think they use them for, like, if somebody has a Walmart parking lot up in New Haven or something, they park them there.
Just leave them there.
Just plow
No, but
it.
I'm talking about the internal,
us?
like, there's no, like,
No,
nobody
no,
else
no,
could use,
no,
it, right? I mean,
no,
like
there's-
parks
that's-
couldn't use them, or,
No, we
The guys know that they're gonna start to be like
yeah,
warfare.
maintenance.
It can
Okay.
kill you.
Got it.
And so you said this was a state contract. So can
Yes.
you just for the public explain the state contract and how that worked?
So the state buys,
And so this one was the same, all the same, like, specs. That's, I'm like, what was the word I was looking for?
This was actually, they were building these 2 state specs.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So
So you didn't need to add your little like
Yeah.
add-ons to
Yeah,
this.
we
This
gotta-
is, okay, great. So that's perfect.
so
All
it's
right.
geared right, it's the right size, it's
Awesome.
we just happened to bump into these 2 trucks, but
Okay.
gotta get them.
All right. Great. Good. All right. So if I could get a motion to approve a request from the Department of Public Works to enter into a contract with Freightliner of Hartford in the amount of $228,206.60, less than trade-in costs of $8,200, plus a $6.60 check from Mo Zachary.
Do we have to approve that
No.
grant?
I know. I'm getting a no. Here.
we have money available in the general fund too.
Okay,
You know,
there we go.
I think we're
Um,
gonna name it Mo's.
Yeah, hey, I like
Name it
that.
a boat.
Are we gonna name it a Mo's?
Mo's
There
one.
we go. All right, for a total cost of $220,006.60 for the purchase of a new Freightliner M2 106 plus 2025 dump truck.
Second.
It's unanimous.
Thank you, Mo's.
Thank you, Mo. Well, actually, because are there anything else? Are you
Right.
up here for
We have
anything else?
One more item at least. So then this next item is a continuation of a contract that we've had with New England Paving since in this format since 2011. They've been working for us since 2008. They were our low bidder for our utility, our localized repair projects at that time. And in 2011, we transferred from a bidding process to a time and material basis. And the contracts since 2011 through 2023 have all been on a time and material basis. It's very difficult to bid out this type of project. And we did an analysis, a cost analysis in 2011, 2015, I believe, 2018, and saw the work that they were doing and how much they were charging us on a time and material basis versus if we went in a unit price basis, and we were saving money. So we were getting not only the best contractor for the job, but also the best amount of, the best cost-effective method to do this type of work. They've done fantastic work in various other towns. Here, every single patch that they've done, we haven't had a failure. We haven't had a settlement. We haven't had a failure. And if you drive on them, you necessarily wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the road and the patch. So what we would like to do is we normally do this in phases. We did it in phases last year, $100,000 clip up to 250. We just like to have a phase one of $100,000 for New England Paving to do the work, some of the work that we had from plow damage of this year, and then some of the storm damage that we've just recently occurred in town. I don't know if you have any questions.
So I guess I just want to, how much of this is probably related to the storm damage that we just had?
Do you think?
I don't know yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
we
To be honest
don't.
with you.
It's
Okay.
he's worked one day on that so
Okay.
far. So I don't envision that it'll be a substantial amount.
So this will go down from, I met the people at the bottom of Turner Hill.
Mhm.
And I talked to him about, I was gonna try to take this wall down. I said, maybe I shouldn't do that. And we talked about it. And I said, are you getting water from anywhere else? They said, I'm getting water from our driveway. So Lou and I went out and looked at the driveway, and sure enough, they're gonna need an apron on their driveway. This is what Jimmy does. They come in, they put the aprons in. People never had they're like perfect. It's crazy.
Right, we never
So
had
is
a
the
complaint.
apron the
The apron is-
homeowner's
No, it's
responsibility or
our-
is that the
If it's our-
town's?
If it's our water,
If our
hitting-
water's going on.
going into their
property, we gotta stop.
Okay,
if it was normal wear and tear,
Okay.
then it would be on them. But if it's our water that's actually going, we prevent our water, we keep our water in the gutter line that
Yep.
goes to our basins and our street.
And like I said, they were crazy busy. They show up here yesterday.
no, I know.
Sunday.
It's crazy. Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Nope.
Gotta do it.
All right. So if I could get a motion to approve a request from the Department of Public Works to extend a contract with New England Paving in the amount of $100,000 for localized repairs.
So moved.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. So this next one is our Local Roads 2 project. We went out to bid, solicited, not only went in the newspaper, we also directly solicited with 8 contractors. We received 3 bids back. This is for the milling and paving of the Aquarian trenches on Weed Street, West Road, and Greenlee Road. So not just the main line, but the laterals from last year's work. FGB came in at the low at $148,852.60. I added a contingency of 15% or $22,000 for $170,852.60. And the funds are currently available in our pavement management improvement program. This is something that we work with Aquarian on. So
This is the stuff where Aquarium went in last year and you put the temporary paving, it had to settle.
it's settled, right? And then Aquarian pays us to come in and do this work. So we, it's in lieu of a road opening permit, they actually pay us for the work.
And so this is the Weed Street is the upper Weed Street area.
Yeah, it's Weed Street from Dunning to West Road.
Okay.
West Road from Sunset Hill to Greenlee,
Yep.
and then Greenlee in approximately 300 to 450 feet, I forgot the exact number, but that was where the new water lines went in, and then all the service laterals associated with it. There aren't many since it's a higher zoning, but all the service laterals will be done as well.
And so we contracted out, but we'll be reimbursed.
We're being reimbursed, yeah.
Yep.
When is this gonna happen? If one more person
I
asks me
know.
about that
I
road.
know.
Yeah, I happen to be in that neighborhood.
Get him out directly. So he's working in another town now. We're trying to get him out. He's got he has to do Harrison, Forest Green Avenue, and then this
A
work.
couple weeks.
Yes, that's what we're planning. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad. Can't imagine driving that every day.
Well, people don't, they route down Chichester and avoid it, so.
Oh, you drive on this every day.
That's not a great reroute.
Well,
I
it's-
can't even
it's-
imagine that reroute.
It's a narrow reroute.
Yes, yeah, not exactly ideal. All right, any other questions?
Nope.
If I could get a motion to approve a request from the Department of Public Works to enter into a contract with FGB Construction in the amount of $148,852.60, plus a contingency of $22,000 for a project total of $170,852.60. The project entails the milling, reclaiming, and repaving, as well as necessary improvements of various roads in town.
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous.
So when the money gets reimbursed, where does it go? Does it go back to the paving programs, go to Kelly?
Well, I
Green
give it
Hill?
to Ann. She
Yeah.
puts it back into the paving account. That's correct.
Okay. Wait, before you go,
Yes.
this is the last Board of Selectmen meeting that Mose will be attending.
so
He is
sad.
retiring on September 6th, and our next meeting is September 10th. So just want to, from the town and from me personally, thank you for everything you've done and all you've taught me in the last 8 months.
Yeah, he's one of New Canaan's own. I mean, he New Canaan high school grad. I mean, when did you graduate from New Canaan High School? When did you graduate from the high school? 78. Yeah. So yeah. Mose and I were in high school together. So I mean, you've been around a long time, and you know this town better than anybody. And it's every road, every sidewalk, you've been a part of putting it all together. So
It's been a pleasure. Very fortunate to have these guys. It's been really good. Thank you very
And
much.
we've been very fortunate to have you. The place looks great. You know, and that just, we know it just doesn't happen. So.
well done.
I didn't see the pension guy.
Thank you. Thank you, James.
Thanks.
Thank
All
you.
right. Did we? I approve. We
So you,
approved that, right?
yeah, you approved the
Okay,
last
so
item.
Transfer station site improvements.
So this is for work at the transfer station in and around the scale house itself, to put in a walkway around the station, an accessible walkway. So, for people visiting the station to pay their bill, what have you. And then, a subsequent, work at the parking area to put in an accessible parking space, and get all the grades to work. So we went out to bid. We advertised it publicly, solicited from 8 contractors. We received 5 back. They ranged in price from $75,622.50 to $188,390.
Oh, that's.
Peter Lonnie Incorporated was the low at $75,622.50. I added a 15% contingency or $11,000 for a total of $86,622.50, and the funds are currently available in our capital budget.
So this is, I see the sidewalk, I see the detail that you provided. So
Right.
it's also the sidewalk around the scale house?
Yeah, it's a raised walkway around the scale house to be able to get into both doors.
Okay.
And then there's an accessible walkway up to the parking area behind, and we
Yeah.
actually had to put in a stone wall because of the grade change between
Oh,
the
yeah.
station and
Okay.
the parking area.
Mhm.
So Maria did that sketch for
Okay.
us.
And then the parking
it's-
spots.
Right. So it's
Okay.
all that area. So it'll be a substantial improvement to what's there now.
So Tiger, are we actually using wooden decking or are we doing some composite?
It's a pressure treated. We were looking at Trex. Problem is it's very slippery,
Right.
so we
And
didn't
hot.
want it. And right. So we went with a pressure treated freestanding deck. That's what we went with instead. We looked at either using an aluminum, decking, things of that nature. Yeah. So we felt that given where it is and and we tried to be a little bit staid, if you will, on it. So yes, it's just a wood decking with a concrete sidewalk that leads up to a new parking area.
What's the useful life on that? 20 years?
I'd say, yeah. Well, yeah, it'll need staining or resealing on occasion, but it's also easily reparable. It's something that's easily maintainable.
Yep.
That was the other reason that we went with this type of material versus another. It was very easy to maintain,
yeah,
especially in this environment.
Any other questions? All right, if I could get a motion to approve a request from the Department of Public Works to enter into a contract with Peter Lonnie Inc. in the amount of $75,622.50 plus a contingency of $11,000 for a total cost of $86,622.50. The project entails the installation of site improvements at the transfer station.
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
And this last item is for miscellaneous repairs in the downtown area of our brick sidewalks and some of our pedestrian ramps. There was several locations in and around Forest Street where Forest and Locust meet. Each of the curb ramps there. We had some work at Forest and East, and then we had a couple slip and falls or trip and falls. Predominantly on the southern side of Elm Street up by Starbucks, then somewhere in the middle between South Avenue and Elm Street, and then 3 locations on Morse Court where there was some depressions that are actually gathering water during the winter time. So we quantified all that up, went out, we publicly advertised, again, sent it to 8 contractors, got 4 bids back. Peter Lonnie Incorporated was the low at $71,200. They added a 15% contingency only because the area that we're looking at, I based it on a square footage basis, and if it's got to expand a little bit in certain areas to make the transition back to the existing, that was for $10,800 for a total of $82,000, and the funds are currently available in this fiscal year's budget and capital budget.
Tiger, given that the next closest bid is double, are we comparing apples to apples here? I mean, that's a
Yes.
big difference.
We are. There are some contractors that would have been in the middle that did not bid because they can't be competitive. So there's at
Or
least 2.
having employed one of these contractors, he's so busy, you can't get him.
That too.
He literally takes a year to get him to do work, masonry work.
Sometimes that is also the other nature of the beast. They want to stay in the mix, but they don't necessarily give
A competitive because they know they can't.
Yeah, at the like the third bidder, sound construction at 146,000. He normally, when he's bidding up against Peter, he's a couple $1,000s higher. He's well within the mix. So last year when he was bidding, he was very, very close, but could be a situation where he's busy and he wants to be in the mix. So he gives a number that I'll do it for, but I'll do it for. I don't want it. I'll do it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're getting the same work.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Each one got the same package. Each one understood what it is. There was one clarification that went out that further quantified the areas that we were looking at, because we wanted to make sure that they understood that in certain areas they were doing not only the brick repair but the concrete ramp. So we did that clarification so I feel that
Okay, as long as you're comfortable with it.
no,
Yep.
it is a market difference. It's a large disparity, but again, there was several contractors in here that decided not to, that I feel would have been in the middle.
I know you've talked about the type of materials that we're using, and over the years, whether this brick set in the sand with a little concrete dust in there, is that the right approach? Are we continuing that approach, or is any of this stuff going to be actually set in?
These right now, we're looking to be the same, but we are looking at changing that. I've got work over at Vine Cottage that I have to do out in front of the Vine Cottage. Is settled out completely, that entire half moon circle. I was going to bid that out and see exactly, and put that on a rat slab, and then see exactly what that pricing difference is at that point. So I've got a very, I would know exactly how much it is.
You said it's expensive to do it.
It's almost double the cost, right? Because you have to set the slab and then put the brick on top of it.
Yeah.
So yes.
You're not guaranteed that that's going to solve the water issue anyway,
Right,
right?
because you could still get frosty things, right?
Right. I mean, it will help. It will definitely help the situation, because we would expect that sidewalk to not pop. You would, in certain areas where we have tree roots, things of that nature, it could pop the entire sidewalk panel below the brick.
Yeah.
So you would run into that problem. And we had some areas in town where we did have concrete sidewalks, and the tree root eventually just heaved it and then brought the entire panel up. At that point, you're faced with having to take the entire panel out, all the brick, the entire panel, and go from there. What we have now is the bricks tend to mold around those types of anomalies. Because they move a little bit, but since they move, we do wind up having, trip hazards here and there.
This is
Holes in.
So just for next budget cycle, because I mean, we have sidewalk repairs in lots of places. I mean, can we just make sure that we are budgeting for next year or
Usually I put in 50,
evaluation of like, it just, we have trip hazards, and I just want to make sure that we're kind of looking at this holistically. And
we can do it. We can do a blanket look at the entire downtown area. Problem too is that I put in the budget in October, and then I go through one more season of freeze thaw. But we can do another analysis through after this work has been done, and then try to detail out everywhere that we
because then you'll
to
have
go.
the look. Is the stuff in Vine Cottage going to be done shortly, or
I'm going to put that out to bid shortly. Yeah, that's one area that needs to be done.
because then we can kind of make a better
Person at that point for
everybody.
to your point, for budget purposes, I can then say, okay, cost this X amount of dollars per square foot for the rat slab beneath it. Then I can apply that across the board. If that's something we want to do, then we could attack sections at a time.
I mean, to be fair, if you look at it as a whole, it's not like it's all bad. There's a very high percentage of it that's good. So, I mean, that's the tough part, is like, we did it all that one way, and maybe that's the best way. I mean, if we did everything on a rat slab, we don't, we have no idea what it would look like today. So, because there's no,
maybe you just have to build in to a
More
maintenance
maintenance.
number.
Yeah.
That's, is it 10% or something? Because you're going to have some issues. You just are.
because the advantage of it moving a little bit, because it'll move and then it moves back into place again too in the spring. I mean, it's,
Right, to your point, that's part of it, was also the ease of maintenance.
Yeah.
So you pick them up, you reset them, and you put them back down again, versus having to
Yeah.
wholesale removal of
Yeah.
a sidewalk slab to put it back down again. So that was back in 2000 or so when.
Long
when they
time
were
they've been
initially,
down.
yeah, this was during Dick Bond's term when they first came up with this specification and this detail was the ease of maintenance, not the fact
Like
that you.
Waveney House. It's like the built-in maintenance that we have to, to add in every year.
We
So
gotta focus on what we own
Mhm.
before we add shiny new toys.
That's Chris Huzzy stood on her chair a couple times in town council. We need to take care of what we own first. Okay.
We forget that over time.
All right, so if I could get a motion to approve a request from the Department of Public Works to enter into a contract with Peter Lonnie Inc. in the amount of $71,200 plus a contingency of $10,800 for a total cost of $82,000. The project entails miscellaneous repairs on various sidewalks.
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we're getting there.
Yeah.
And Mimi, and Mimi.
Cheryl
Now
has.
that we're talking about Kerma and sidewalks.
So we removed the other items under purchase orders, but the Kerma item remains, and that is for cyber insurance, which has become, essential in this day and age. So this will actually be split with the Board of Ed when it goes into effect, when we process this purchase order.
And do we know what, is it a 50-50 split?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you tell me what the acronym KERMA is again? I'm sorry.
Connecticut Interlocal Regional Risk Management
Agency.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
It's our insurance company.
I know, I just want to know.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, cool.
Okay, any questions?
So it's just strictly education fees. I mean, that's basically.
No, you're on the one before this.
Oh, sorry.
Purchase order.
Purchase.
Just Kerma.
Oh,
Yep.
sorry. I skipped ahead.
That's okay. This is the-
34,127.
correct.
Yep.
Got
For
it.
cyber
Mhm.
insurance.
Got it.
Okay,
All right.
all right, if I don't have any further questions, if I could get approval of a request from the Finance Department to approve the following FY25 purchase orders. Kerma for $34,127.
Second.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
When will
Thank
we
you.
hear, when will we hear about these other, the 280?
I think next, the 10th. Yeah, okay. Building Department education fees, Brian and Ann.
So we don't need a purchase order on this. We just wanted to bring it in front for transparency because it's a required fee by state. On the building permit, it's 26 cents.
They assess the value of the permits, the same way we do evaluation. The State Office of Education and Data Management assesses 26 cents per thousand. And then that money goes into a fund because we need 30 hours a year of continuing education to maintain our licenses. They use that money to host seminars for us.
And Brian, who attends those seminars? You and others in the department?
Oh, many.
Yeah.
I mean, for New Canaan. though.
No, from here.
Who from New Canaan attends?
Well, we take turns because we don't want to empty the office out. I've attended them. I've actually taught them.
Okay.
Are they good?
Some are, some better than others.
John and Scott that attend these? Okay.
They need the 30 hours.
All right, any other
right.
questions?
No.
All right.
Got to stay up on everything.
All right, so if I could get a motion to approve a request from the building department to authorize the following payments to the state of Connecticut for education fees. And it's just the effort, we've already paid the F4024, or do we have to pay
No,
both?
we have not. So that's. what we're
Okay, so we have to pay
yeah,
both.
We'll do that and then.
All right, so for FY24 payment, $19,315.56, and the FY25 estimated payment of $19,400.
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous, thank you. Okay, holidays.
Easy.
Okay.
This is just the annual approval of the holidays for the town of New Canaan. We double checked. We think they're all as they should, and so we just need you to approve them.
Any questions? If not, if I could get a motion to approve town holidays for 2025.
So moved.
It's unanimous. Okay, and then you should have on your tablets contracts under 25 or under $10,000. if you have any questions on those.
These education fees are in there, under building inspector. Those are,
They shouldn't be in there. Those are $19,000. That shouldn't be in here. It's in here. Oh, you know why? Because you know what? You know what? We need to take those out because these, so they're the state of, the data management, the deep building inspector education fees are in here individually. There are four.
I was curious because we just approved them. And they're not, but they're not.
But they're not these fees that we
They're
just
different.
approved. So they shouldn't be in this contracts under 10,000. We need to remove those from the tablets. That's good catch. Okay. Any other?
What's that?
I like the 6 cent one. That's a good one.
All right. If not, if I could get a motion, or you just reviewed, so you don't have to prove those. All right, and then legal bills. Okay. So if I could get a motion to approve the legal fees.
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous. And overpayments, tax overpayments.
Alrighty.
Any questions? Could I get a motion to approve refunds for tax overpayments?
So moved.
Second.
It's unanimous. Thank you. Selectmen comments. I guess the only comment I have is, I hope you all saw, I just received yesterday a letter from the State Department of Housing, Commissioner Sela Mascara-Pruno, that we've been approved for our affordable housing credit. So we will be in a 4-year moratorium. We are waiting for that to be published in the Connecticut Law Journal. It'll either be this Tuesday or next Tuesday. And then
Is it
it's
effective
official.
immediately or does it have to?
Once it's
Published, okay.
published in
Thank you.
those journals, then once it's published, then it is official. So I have the letter, but it becomes official when it's published in the Law Journal. So, and then just wanted to wish everyone a happy Memorial Day because we will not
Labor Day.
Labor
Labor
Day.
Day.
Sorry, Labor Day. Enjoy your 3-day weekend. I'm starting the summer over. I want to start the
Let's
summer
do it.
over. Yeah, no. Okay, anything else?
Just a shout out. We talked about Public Works earlier, but the guys showed us pictures during the break of Turner Hill and how bad the damage was and how quickly they got it back up and running. So, I mean, these guys really do an amazing job, and we can't thank them enough. I mean, it's really incredible what they're able to accomplish just in 24 hours. So,
And over the weekend.
Yeah.
With, you know, it says these are when everybody else is
Yeah.
not working. So.
And I know some other towns, their first selectman declared a state of emergency, but the governor has done that. So there was no real need for
Duplicate.
me to do that since, we're already, and the finance department, I mean, kudos to the entire staff and town hall because instantly, finance and all the, HR, everybody got together. They set up a process for all the costs associated with the cleanup to be captured so that we can submit those to the state if we hopefully get an emergency, a federal emergency management declaration, and hopefully some of those costs can get reimbursed. So we'll see, that's not imminent, but we are set up to take care of that if we do get that declaration. So yes, next meeting is September 10th. We've moved it from the 3rd. So if there's nothing else, if I could get a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
It's unanimous. Thank you very much.